Chapter 1587. What the hell is this? The sage roared in shock, his voice full of fear. He was shocked to find that below him was a black hole similar to the abyss of the universe. He did not know how deep it was, but the sage knew that if he fell in he would not be able to get out. I must not be swallowed by this thing. As a perfect being, how can I be swallowed so easily? Absolutely not. I cannot tolerate this situation. The sage struggled with all his might as he roared like a madman. His golden eyes revealed a trace of fear that penetrated deep into his soul. As a perfect being, how could he die? Absolutely not. Idiot, when did I say I was going to swallow you? You still have some value. Dustless laughed and said, the reason you can still talk like a lunatic is because of my mercy. Otherwise, with the power of God's might and my eye power, you would have already drifted to the abyss of the universe. You still want me to thank you for your kindness? Sage asked angrily. At the same time, he felt that the black hole's gravitational force was much weaker, and he could move his body freely. Of course not. Shaking his finger, Dustless said coldly, even so, you still have to die but in a different way. In any case, it can be considered as me reusing trash. Reusing trash? Sage's golden mouth twitched and he shouted, the trash you are talking about is me? This is blasphemy. Swish, swish, swish. The sage opened his mouth and shot out a powerful ray of light. The silver ray of light went straight for Dustless's face. Boom, boom, boom. The thick light covered Dustless's eyes. In his anger, Sage increased the power of this move to the limit. It was even bigger and looked unavoidable. This kind of trash move again? Out of boredom, Wuxia raised his arm again. Disappear for me. Bang, bang, bang. Dustless slapped down lightly, and the light that was rushing over was sent flying by Dustless. Just like before, it changed its trajectory. Damn you. Sage's eyes widened, and he sadly found that his move was flying toward him again. Boom, boom, boom. Sage was both angry and helpless. Faced with his own attack, he was helpless as well. His entire body was blown to smithereens, turning into a pool of fresh red blood. You can absorb him now. Dustless glanced at the pocket-sized figure and said casually. This person was Nina Yadillard. The red liquid on the ground was nourishment for her. Thank you. Nina Yadillard glanced at Dustless gratefully before diving into the red liquid like a fish in water. Her originally pocket-sized body also became slightly larger. With this cycle, she would soon be able to return to her normal appearance. No wonder you didn't kill me. Staring at the gradually growing Nina Yadillard, Sage understood Dustless's evil intentions. This guy was not being merciful, he wanted to squeeze this woman dry. Don't even think about it. The sage roared and a ray of light shot towards Nina Yadillard. Isn't it better to just disappear obediently? Why do you have to resist? Dustless shook his head as he turned into a flash of light and appeared in front of Nina Yadillard. Tao Breaker 88, Flying Dragon strikes the thief. A thicker flash of light shot out. Due to the angle, the two beams of light inevitably intertwined. Tear him apart. Looking at the light in Dustless's hand, Sage roared. The light beam shattered in the end, but why can't the perfect me be better than him? The sage gloomily muttered to himself. One of them had been torn apart, but that miserable person wasn't Dustless, it was the perfect him. Boom, boom, boom. The body that had been repaired several times exploded again, turning into a pool of dark red liquid. As time passed, Nina Yadillard gradually recovered. On the other hand, Sage shrunk as he was continuously absorbed. The majestic sage sadly became a worm, and Dustless used God's might to devour him, and that was the end of Sage's life. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. How boring. Dustless lazily hugged his head as he looked at the distant city through the transparent window of his apartment. He watched TV to pass the time. Akatsuki Koju is dead, Vatler is dead, and the first primogenitor's War King domain has been swept away. All his enemies have been eliminated by Dustless, so naturally he was bored. This kind of lazy life is quite comfortable, but as time goes on, it is inevitable that he will get bored. Bang! At that moment there was a sudden explosion. A gust of cold wind invaded the warm room. Dustless looked at the source of the sound and saw Natsuki Minamiya. What's the result? Dustless asked curiously. They all agreed and are willing to obey your orders. Even the Lion King organization has chosen to submit to you. Natsuki gave Dustless a satisfactory answer. The entire Itagami Island is willing to break away from the Japanese government. TSK, I didn't expect you to be so popular. Those stubborn bastards are willing to follow your orders. They are treating you like a king. Just a day ago, Wuxia requested for Itagami Island to become independent and cut off all ties with Japan. Wuxia thought that the Lion King organization would be against it, but who would have thought that they would agree to it? Treating me like a king? Bullshit. They are afraid of being destroyed by me. Dustless sneered. Just as he was about to open his mouth to speak, Nangong Natsuki's sudden words stunned him. Chapter 1588. Let's go on a date, Dustless. Nangong Natsuyu said seriously with narrowed eyes. Date? Dustless pondered over this word for a moment. He was stunned for a few seconds before he caught the faint smile on Natsuki's face. He quickly realized that this was a trap. I refuse. Dustless glanced at Natsuki with a "don't try to fool me" expression. Why would Natsuki want to go on a date with him? Dustless shook his head. The probability was 0. She was not a love-struck fool. She must be plotting something if she wanted to go on a date with him. Are you not a man? Natsuki was stunned for a moment before she became angry. She had already given him enough face by asking him on a date. She did not expect him to refuse. Am I a man or not? Are you sure you want to prove it? Dustless blinked innocently and asked. He then began to take off his clothes. Bastard, what are you doing? Natsuki was shocked. She quickly turned her back to Dustless. Put your clothes on the boat. Hee hee. Dustless laughed dryly. He shrugged and said helplessly, You asked me if I am a man or not. I will take off my clothes to prove it to you. Natsuki was furious. She angrily stomped her feet. She turned her head and stared at Dustless. Her eyes were filled with tears. Is there something wrong with Natsuki's head? Seeing this scene, Dustless's face was filled with a strange expression. Looking at the sobbing Nangong Natsuyu, he felt as if his worldview had collapsed. Nangong Natsuyu, the strong woman, was crying? This joke was not funny at all. Cough cough cough. Sorry I was rude just now. I agree to go on a date with you. Wuxia finally compromised. He glanced at Nangong Na-yu and frowned. At the same time he wrinkled his nose. He smelled a scent from Nangong Na-yu that he had never smelled before. Strange. Why does she have my scent on her? Staring at Nangong Natsuki, Wuxia's expression became even more strange. He stared at the girl's dark eyes. They were like the abyss of the universe that attracted his attention. Hey, let's go. Hearing that Wuxia agreed to go on a date, Nangong Na-yu's face immediately lit up with joy. She quickly pulled Wuxia's arm and skipped away. She was completely different from the usual Nangong Na-yu, who was inflexible and calm. Really? Are you kidding me? I still want to sleep a little longer. Yawning tiredly, Wuxia could only change his clothes and go out to play with her. I don't know what's wrong with me today. Inside the elevator, Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he stared at Nangong Natsuyu. She was like a completely different person. Her personality was the opposite of her usual self. She gave off the feeling of a moody witch. Miss Natsuki, where do you want to go? Looking at the scorching sun on the street, Dustless was dispirited. He wanted to take an afternoon nap under the scorching sun, not to mention going shopping with Natsuki. Let's just walk around. Grabbing Dustless's arm, the girl skipped away. She was extremely happy. But before she could take 2 steps, she was blocked by some ignorant people. Hey Gigolo, let go of my hand. Let me do it. A few figures suddenly appeared from a nearby alley. They reeked of alcohol and made people want to vomit. They had bracelets that represented the demon race. Their strength was definitely not ordinary. If you get out of my way, I can pretend that nothing happened. Dustless expressionlessly glanced at them. He was not interested in these small fries. But Natsuki's stubborn temper flared up. Get down here and kowtow to admit your mistake. Natsuki's face darkened as she coldly warned. Even her eyes were filled with a red light. Otherwise, you will regret it. When did this girl become so arrogant? Dustless stared at Natsuki in astonishment. He chose to remain silent and watch the show. Little girl, are you looking for death? You look quite pretty. Apologize to me and I will let bygones be bygones. The hooligan who suddenly appeared stared at Natsuki's delicate face. His hand was already reaching out to grab her. You're looking for death. Natsuki lifted her small foot and swept it out. The hooligan was sent flying. The force behind the kick was extremely ferocious. Ka-ka-ka sounds could be heard. His bones were definitely broken. You broke his bones with a kick? That brat is a demon race. His physique is stronger than normal humans. Natsuki is not a melee fighter. But Dustless was stunned. Bastard, you dare to hit our boss? Everyone, let's teach him a lesson. Several hoodlums were furious. They took out steel pipes, iron rods and other things and rushed over. They all smashed towards Nangong Nayu. You guys can kill each other? Natsuki coldly said. She blinked her eyes and the hooligans started to beat each other. Let's go, Chinkun. Natsuki pulled Dustless's hand to leave, but she found that she couldn't pull him away. She turned her head and looked at him in confusion. Dustless was as cold as ice. Mississippi. Although I don't know what happened, you are not Natsuki. The taijutsu you used to break that hooligan's bones was armament hockey. Secondly, it should be genjutsu that controlled them to fight each other. Although I don't know how you did it, I clearly felt the fluctuation of chakra. Please give me a reasonable explanation. Dustless coldly stared at Natsuki. No wonder this girl felt strange. She was completely different from the usual Natsuki. It turned out that she was an imposter. Sure enough, I was seen through. Natsuki shrugged helplessly. Her tone was somewhat mocking. This girl? Wu Chen's mouth twitched. He glared at Nangong Nayu. Her tone was the same as his, tangled. Chapter 1589. The young girl's eyes were filled with ridicule, and a trace of teasing flowed within them. Her cute and exquisite face was suffused with 2 faint blushes, and she was extremely beautiful. In this world, chakra and armament hockey are exclusive to me, and no one has any reason to learn them, so why do you know how to use them? Speaking of this, Dustless paused and said, so please tell me your identity and origin, otherwise, it will be difficult for you to escape from my hands. Phew. As his voice fell, Dustless grabbed the girl's white arm. Let me go. The girl's face was stiff, and her angry look was quite cute and charming. Crystal tears squeezed out of her eyes again, and she looked like she was about to cry. But this time it obviously didn't work. Dustless just snorted and chose to turn a blind eye. His face was firm and he wasn't confused by her at all. At the same time, Dustless began to think about the origin of the girl. Koju, that guy seems to have a similar experience as me. Dustless suddenly thought of Koju. Koju's daughter, Koju, also tricked him like this. Could it be? As if he understood something, Dustless's face twitched fiercely, and his calm eyes rolled up stormy waves, and he stared at the girl's eyes in disbelief. This kind of thing can be followed. Koju's daughter ran from the future to the present. If this is the case, it can also perfectly explain the origin of the girl's chakra and armament hockey. After all, Dustless is the only one on this planet who knows armament hockey and chakra, so the identity of the girl is actually on the verge of being revealed. You finally understand. The girl showed an unhappy expression. She seemed to be very dissatisfied that Dustless guessed her identity. Oh, I'm sorry. Dustless blushed and he let go of the girl's hand and asked awkwardly, what's your name? My name is Natsuki. The girl who looked exactly like Natsuki replied. Good name. Dustless nodded slightly upon hearing this. His previous gloomy mood was swept away. He stared at the girl's crystalline pupils and after hesitating for a while, he asked expectantly, Your father, is it me? When he said this, Dustless looked depressed. After all, he hadn't made any progress with Natsuki Nangong, and they hadn't reached the point of having a child yet. However, Dustless had no choice but to think in that direction due to the strange girl in front of him. Take a guess. The girl named Moonless revealed a sly smile. Let me guess. Dustless rolled his eyes and said angrily, Although I don't know how you did it, but I am the only person on this planet who has chakra, and armament hockey is also the same. The answer is obvious, and you and Natsuki look exactly the same. Dustless's face twitched as he sighed inwardly at the impermanence of the world. Tell me, why are you looking for me? My future daughter. Dustless put on a different face, which was completely different from the shameless expression just now. Daughter? The girl blinked her eyes and said sarcastically, Then I want to ask this father, a father who takes off his clothes in front of his daughter and asks his daughter to verify whether he is a man or not, this kind of guy should go to hell. Dustless opened his mouth and found that he was speechless, and his face was red with shame. Knowing that the girl was indirectly insulting him, he quickly waved his hand to cover up. You don't know, you have to understand that the father didn't do it on purpose, you have to understand him. I'll let you go this time. The girl with delicate appearance put her hands on her hips, and then looked directly at Dustless's eyes, thinking, It's really disappointing, it's a bit different from what I imagined. Then what did you imagine me to be like? Dustless calmly asked, and at the same time, his brows were slightly wrinkled, and his eyes were looking at the distant sky, and there was a flash of anger in his eyes. He could feel an evil aura of disaster coming at him at high speed. At least I won't be a strange uncle who takes off his clothes in front of his daughter. The girl's face was very serious. Pucci. Dustless vomited blood and glared at her. It seemed that this girl still couldn't get over this and was still thinking about such a trivial matter. But to be honest, I'm also very surprised. Staring at the girl's delicate face, Dustless shook his head lightly. Her height and appearance were almost the same as Natsuki Nangong, so it was no wonder that he recognized her wrongly. In fact, if she didn't use chakra, Dustless would still think that this girl was Natsuki Nangong. Roar, 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 roar. At this moment, in the depths of the blue void, a hysterical roar suddenly sounded. Looking up, it was a ferocious-looking evil dragon. Of course, it could also turn into a flying lizard. Is that why you're here? Pointing at the evil dragon in the depths of the void, Dustless stroked his chin and said proudly, "Since you can inherit my chakra, you can't be weak. You shouldn't be so weak that you can't even deal with a dragon." Dustless only glanced at the evil dragon and then ignored it. There was nothing special about it and there was nothing worthy of his attention. Of course there are other things. The girl's face turned serious. "You too." At this moment, an untimely voice suddenly sounded. Dustless turned his head and saw a girl dressed in gothic lowly clothing. Although she was young, her aura was very strong, and there was an inexplicable majesty about her. "Yo Natsuki." Dustless waved his hand in greeting. He knew that this was the real Natsuki Nangong, and the girl just now was just an imposter. Or rather, she was the daughter of Dustless and Natsuki Nangong, although her arrival was a bit strange. Chapter 1590. Nangong Natyue looked at herself, who looked exactly the same as her. Her expression was one of shock. Her delicate little face was filled with astonishment. She was also extremely shocked by the young lady in front of her. You are, however, in some aspects Natsuki was much more flexible than Dustless. She stared at the girl and after a while, a wisp of wisdom flashed in her eyes. She seemed to have seen through the girl's identity, and then she fell silent. Cough, cough, cough. Seeing the three of them fall silent, Dustless had no choice but to stand up and cough twice. There was nothing he could do about it. It was inevitable that men would suffer losses sometimes. Roar, 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 roar. Deep in the sky, a ferocious-looking dragon descended from the sky. Its appearance was quite ferocious, and its eyes were filled with killing intent. There was even saliva dripping from its mouth. Even if you overestimate yourself, you should know when to stop. The young girl coldly raised her right hand. Her pale palm contained a trace of destructive power. At the same time, her black eyes that were as deep as onyx also showed a drastic change. A pair of mysterious blue and white eyes appeared in the girl's eyes. Seeing this, Dustless's eyes flashed with surprise and he muttered to himself, "How surprising, it seems that she inherited the Tensigen from me." Boom boom boom. The turbulent repulsive force erupted at full speed, and the explosive impact hit the dragon that was fluttering its wings in the void. Roar, 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 roar. Under the violent impact, the dragon howled in extreme pain and was blasted back dozens of meters. There was a clear dent in its abdomen and scarlet blood flowed out of its mouth. This attack forced the dragon to retreat again and again. "How is the future me? Don't tell me I'm dead?" Dustless asked expectantly. After all, Akatsuki Koju's daughter, Akatsuki Koju, came from the future, and at that time, Akatsuki Koju also died because of this saint annihilation. "Future? You just destroyed this planet." The girl flicked her beautiful black hair and gave an answer that made Natsuki speechless. "As expected, it was a mistake to let you live." Natsuki glared at Dustless. There was a hint of blame between her brows, and she was also quite conflicted. She looked at the girl who looked exactly like her with a strange expression. Natsuki felt the connection between their bloodlines, and the technique she used was Dustless's. It was obvious what it meant. Thinking of this, Natsuki's face was filled with embarrassment and a rare shyness. "Destroying a planet?" Dustless pondered. Natsuki's words, but in his eyes it was normal. After all, this wasn't the only planet that he destroyed. Roar, 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 roar. Of Natsuki, 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 and Natsuki, Natsuki. Moreover, it opened its mouth and spat out thick flames at Wu Chen and the others. Boom, 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 boom. Natsuki, 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 of Natsuki, 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 and Natsuki, 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 Natsuki. Really? Dustless sighed in the midst of the flames. The golden light was especially dazzling under the cover of the flames. It was golden and resplendent, emitting a holy and warm light. Consisino? The girl said the name of the technique. She was very familiar with it. Disappear. Dustless raised his head to look at the sky and indifferently glanced at the black evil dragon. Then his eye energy spun rapidly. A strand of black flame instantly consumed the black evil dragon. Tenso. The giant dragon's huge fat body was instantly annihilated by the flames. It was pulled into the boundless sea of fire, and the black netherworld fire swallowed it up along with its bones. Ao. The evil dragon screamed in pain until it finally choked and disappeared. As expected of my dad. Seeing this, the girl gave Dustless a thumbs up. Her face was full of praise and a smile as if she was saying, "I'm not as good as you. This little girl can't be an imposter, right?" Dustless was speechless. He subconsciously looked at Nangong Natsuki. She also had an expression that said, "This has nothing to do with me." However, this girl who looked exactly like Nangong Natsuki had a normal expression. "I have something to tell you." At this moment, the girl suddenly moved closer to Dustless and said, "If you want to leave this world in the future, remember to bring everyone with you." Everyone? Hearing this, Dustless was stunned. He blurted out, "Are you talking about Azure Wing and the others? Who else do you think I'm talking about? You don't seem to know anyone else in this world, right?" The girl rolled her eyes and asked, "This planet will be destroyed in the future. I'm sure you know what this means." Dustless nodded slightly. If the planet was destroyed, it meant that all living things would wither away. Every blade of grass and tree on this planet would vanish completely. That's a must. He nodded resolutely. It would be fine if this planet was safe and sound. If it was destroyed, then he could only bring them away. As for the reason, Dustless didn't ask. There was no decisive future. Everything was changed by human factors. "Aren't you curious about how this planet will be destroyed?" The girl was somewhat depressed. Dustless's reaction to such shocking news was actually mediocre. He was even indifferent. She was quite disappointed. "Who knows?" Dustless shrugged and said, "The future is also unreliable. In fact, the moment you appeared, the future changed. That so-called reason will also change." In the original work, Koju's daughter, Koju, used this method to change the ending of Koju's death. Thus, it didn't matter what the future was like. It would change anyway. My journey in this world is about to come to an end. Looking up at the sky, Dustless's lazy eyes were filled with expectation. Chapter 1591. Inside the system world. The sky was clear and cloudless. White clouds floated lazily in the sky. The green mountains and clear waters were the only real world in this world. The black-haired young man sighed under the shade of a tree. A woman's thoughts can't be easily guessed. Really? Compared to Itagami Island, the system world was more comprehensive. The scenery was more beautiful and the climate was more suitable for human habitation. At first, Wuxia thought that if he brought Nangong Na Yu and the others away, they would fiercely object. Wuxia had even prepared an illusion. However, the world was unpredictable. When the girls heard that they were going to play in another world, they agreed without hesitation. Before leaving, Dustless once again destroyed the world of bloodthirsty frenzy. "You are really greedy." Ling Air, the incarnation of the system consciousness, frowned. When he left, Dustless used one of the strongest illusions, the infinite Tsukuyami, to kill the whole world and used the descent of the divine tree world to absorb everyone's vitality. Every time he left, Wuxia would do this to enhance his strength. Although the means were a bit evil, Wuxia, who was used to doing bad things, also kept calm. So what? This is a world where the strong prey on the weak. Being weak is a sin. Dustless smiled perfunctorily and said, "Everything ends here. Now we can change to the next world. This is good too. I can use infinite Tsukuyami and divine tree world descent to absorb the world. My strength will increase too. I hope I can go to a world with a high level of power." Dustless prayed. Ling couldn't control this kind of thing. In fact, it was randomly chosen. Where to go depended entirely on Dustless's personal luck. Kacha. Linger's seemingly weak arm gently tore apart the void, and a shocking black hole appeared. No, it was more accurate to say that it was a spatial tunnel. How violent. Wuxia shook his head and glanced at her calmly. Then he plunged into the cave. In a strange world, the weather was clear and very hot. However, Wuqian's first impression was that it was very cold. He subconsciously opened his eyes and saw the world in the water. F***CK. Why is she so good at picking a place? Next time she might as well put me in lava. Wuxia opened his mouth and scolded loudly. Suddenly, a large amount of lake water invaded his lungs. He tried to mobilize his strength, but he helplessly discovered that perhaps because he had just crossed over, his body was soft and had no strength at all. Splash! At the same time, a huge wave came from the lake. Dustless looked for the source. An unexpected figure appeared in front of him. She had aqua blue hair and aqua blue eyes. Even her eyebrows were aqua blue. Her fair face was as delicate as mutton fat jade. Her bright eyes were full of vigor as she pounced on Wuxia. Her figure was exceptionally hot. She was wearing a pure white tight-fitting uniform. Her curvaceous figure was particularly eye-catching. "This girl is so familiar," Dustless whispered to himself. He secretly searched for the joy of the person. Suddenly he thought of an almost identical figure. His body suddenly felt cold. "Is death? Bad luck. Why did I meet this evil star? First I fell into the water. Now I inexplicably became the prey of this woman." Dustless felt cold. He had goosebumps all over his body. His death was a famous sadist. Her greatest interest was to torture others. Although Dustless had no grudges with her, this girl came to save him inexplicably. It showed that there was an unknown relationship. In short, Dustless was in the sight of his death. "Don't run." There was a faint voice from the bottom of the water. Dustless looked up. It turned out to be his death, who was close at hand. This girl was strong and good at swimming. She caught Dustless almost instantly. She held him in her arms and then rushed to the surface of the water. "Although I don't know what happened, I can be sure that she is looking for me for absolutely no good thing." Dustless's expression was full of depression. Just at that moment, he keenly caught the coldness in his death's eyes. Plop. In an instant, his death took Dustless out of the water, jumped to the shore very vigorously, and threw Dustless on the ground. She pointed at Dustless and said, "You want to die before I torture you? Dream on. I still have countless kinds of torture to try. This time I will try it on your body." Hearing this, Dustless was suddenly dumbfounded and asked with a speechless face, "That? Although I am very grateful to you for saving me, did you get the wrong person?" "Miss, I don't know you." Dustless was confused by this sudden change. He just crossed into this world and did not offend his death. It was too sad to be a scapegoat for no reason. "By the way, there seemed to be a body under the sea just now. That guy looked a little like me. Did his death make a mistake?" Dustless bowed his head and thought carefully about the development of the matter. Soon he found a big problem. He stared at his death speechlessly. It was estimated that this girl had mistaken him for someone else. "I saw a person who looked 70% like me at the bottom of the sea. The guy you said may be dead. If you don't believe me, you can have a look." Chapter 1592. However, these words had no effect. His death just stared at Dustless coldly. Her cold pupils did not change at all. She just stared at him quietly. More and more coldness and killing intent flowed from her body. "Three beasts." After a moment of silence, his death called the names of the three subordinates. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Three black shadows appeared behind her in an instant. They were wearing the same clothes and they all knelt on one knee very respectfully. They looked at his death with a look of worship and fanaticism. It was as if they saw God. This guy said that he was not the prince. Torture him well, let him admit it, and then let him die in pain. How dare he say that I mistook him for someone else? His death turned her head and left. She sat on the chair prepared in advance and watched quietly. It seemed that Dustless was not qualified for her to do anything. "Prince." Dustless heard the words and his eyes flashed with surprise. After a few seconds of contemplation, he was enlightened. He secretly guessed, "I'm afraid that his death thought I was the bullshit prince. Unfortunately, that guy is dead." Dustless could be 100% sure that the body in the deepest part of the river was the prince's. He was not the prince, but his appearance was somewhat similar. He was afraid that his death had mistaken him for someone else. "Ah, Your Royal Highness, I'm sorry. This is the order of the minister, who asked you to do the right thing." As a result, the minister was forced to ask his death for help and asked us to kill you secretly. You have to understand that we are still fighting with the alien race. For you, his death secretly came back. Your Royal Highness really deserves to die. The blonde kid squatted and looked at Dustless. His face was full of ridicule and murderous intent. "This guy seems to be called Nyo." Glancing at him faintly, Dustless's mind waned. After a while, his strength had recovered 80 to 90%. Now his whole body was full of strength. His death. This guy doesn't seem to be the prince. The silver-haired middle-aged man bowed and respectfully said to his death, They wear different clothes and are different in age. I have seen the prince before and this guy should be two different people. We can barely be considered acquaintances. Dustless glanced at the middle-aged man in surprise. He was also quite familiar with him. This man was called Leva, who used to be Bulat's former boss, the former general of the empire who was both wise and brave. He was framed and arrested because he refused to bribe. Later, he was rescued by Isteth and had been loyal to her ever since. Is that so? Hearing this, Isteth nodded slightly and looked at Dustless quietly. She asked, "Did you see other people's bodies under the riverbed? Tell me the exact location and I'll let you go if you're right." "Let me go?" Dustless frowned. Isteth seemed to be too proud. Obviously, she caught the wrong person, but she didn't apologize. Now she said that she would let him go. She was too arrogant. "I'm sorry." Dustless turned his head and did not look at Isteth. He said loudly, "I am forgetful. You are threatening me again. I suddenly forgot the place where the guy died." The tone of this guy's words. The three beasts heard the words and their mouths were twitching wildly. They stared at Dustless with horrified eyes. Their big eyes seemed to be about to fall out, which gave people a very shocking feeling. The dull eyes were obviously saying, "If you want to die, just say it. There is no need to be tortured to death by Isteth." "You guy." Not only the three beasts were stunned, but Isteth was also full of astonishment. Her eyes were dull and empty, gray, and lost the shrewd brilliance of the past. Interesting. Isteth, who came back to her senses, had a strange light in her beautiful eyes. She looked at Dustless curiously and asked calmly, "Are you forgetful? Do you need me to help you think?" "Really?" Dustless was surprised when he heard the words. He quickly opened his mouth and pointed to the depths of his throat and said, "If it's possible, thank you very much. I just drank a big mouthful of seawater. Now, please help me suck it all out with artificial respiration. After that, I will take you to find the body of the prince." "Ah!" After Dustless said this, there was a sound of gnashing teeth. Looking at the source of the sound, what came into view was a ferocious-looking brat in Yo. "What did you say? I didn't hear it clearly. Say it again if you have the guts." Nyo was full of anger and his eyes were fixed on Dustless. His sharp eyes seemed to be looking for a suitable place to cut open Dustless's stomach. Catching the raging coldness in the depths of Nyo's eyes, Dustless sneered and shouted, "Are you an idiot? I will let that woman give me artificial respiration and suck the water out of my stomach. If you understand, get out of my way, you little retard. You are looking for death." The golden-haired brat was so irritated that he almost vomited blood. At that moment he attacked with his immature fist. This weak fist seemed to be extremely fragile, but it was definitely enough to easily smash human bones. For the three beasts trio, Isteth was a godlike existence. She was even bigger than the emperor of this country. Now Dustless actually let their idol do artificial respiration. How could they tolerate it? "You don't know how to live." His eyelids twitched slightly, and a surge of energy broke out of his body. The irresistible repulsive force suddenly repelled him. Shinra Tensei. Bang bang bang. The brat who was caught off guard was immediately sent flying, rolling and crawling more than 10 meters away. Only then did he lie on the ground awkwardly. His head was close to the ground and his buttocks were high up. It was extremely funny. Chapter 1593. Nu. Leva and Didos stared at Nu, who was embarrassed, their eyes widened in disbelief. Their expressions were extremely exaggerated as they locked on Dustless, who was standing still. Their heads were a little dizzy. "Bah, it hurts." Didos slapped himself. The burning pain made him understand that this was not a dream. How did he do it? Taigu? Isthetha's watery eyes also flashed with a strong surprise. The moment just now happened too fast. Everything was just a flash of lightning. She had no extra time to react. When she realized it, Nu had already been blown away. "I can be sure now that you are not the prince." Isteth sat elegantly on the chair and crossed her legs very lazily. "The prince that the minister told me is just an ordinary political enemy. He has no strength and is just an ordinary human. Although Nu's strength is ordinary, she can definitely beat an ordinary human, so you should not be the prince." "Is it?" Dustless heard the words and wiped the sweat stains, then patted off the dust on his body. There was a hot temperature in his body. After the wet clothes were dried, he whispered, "Since this is the case, then it is a misunderstanding. Goodbye." "Wait." The elegant voice came again. Dustless turned his head to look. It was Isteth who was smiling. "Anything else?" Wuxia asked. He felt a cold and gloomy aura locking onto him, as if he was being stared at by a hungry beast. The high-density evil spirit could even make people have the illusion that they were drowning in a sea of blood. However, Dustless maintained shock from start to finish and was not affected. This guy can ignore my murderous spirit? There were ripples in the calm eyes. Isthetha's bored expression gradually became interested. But you hit my subordinates, don't you think you should apologize? Apologize? You want me to apologize? Dustless heard the words and sneered. I can tell you not to mention your subordinates even if I hit you. Do you want me to apologize? Don't even think about it. Reckless fool. Leva and Didos looked at each other angrily. They looked at each other and attacked from different directions. They were all strong people who followed Isteth to fight. Although they were not strong enough to fight 100 people, at least 1 against 10 was absolutely no problem. You bugs. Silver frowned slightly and some hostility flashed through his eyes. He revealed his scarlet 3-tomo Sharingan, and then glanced at the 2 people attacking him with his deep Sharingan. Plop. The 2 of them were severely injured in an instant. They fell to the ground with pale faces. Wuxia didn't even move his hands. Isteth was surprised when she saw this and she immediately asked, Leva Dietz, you 2 are getting more and more useless. There's no need to scold the 2 of them. That's because you'll end up the same way if you run into me. In fact, I don't even need to do anything. I can easily deal with you. The scarlet 3-tomo Sharingan stared at Isteth. Dustless said calmly, so, please don't humiliate yourself. Madam Isteth. At this time, Leva's voice sounded with difficulty. He stared at Dustless's eyes with fear and said in horror, this guy is not an ordinary human being. His eyes are very strange. It seems to be something like illusion, but it's very real. Is his consciousness still awake? Staring at Leva with surprise, Dustless was quite surprised. He immediately looked at his right hand that was already bloody and nodded. This guy is very decisive. He uses pain to get rid of the illusion. He has rich fighting experience. Are you also a person with Taigu ability? Looking at Dustless's eyes, Isteth was confused. She did not remember that there was such a Taigu as eyes. The 48 Taigu of the Empire had accurate records. This ability had never been heard of. Taigu? I don't need that ability. It's superfluous for me. Dustless shook his head, then he turned and left regardless of Isthetha's idea. What kind of place is this? Dustless looked around and found that there were mountains around. There was no one. It was estimated that it was a very remote place. He could not help but curse in his mind. Why do I encounter this annoying trifling thing every time I travel? Wuxia smiled bitterly. He didn't have the slightest connection with that deceitful prince, and they didn't have any relationship. It was just that their appearances were somewhat similar. Whoosh. At this time, it suddenly snowed in the sunny day. The sunlight could be reflected under the sunshine. Looking carefully, a large number of ice dregs were swept up in the sky, followed by the cold wind as expected. The footsteps stopped. Dustless looked at the empty space in front of him. Even if she did not turn her head to look deliberately, she knew that Isteth was coming. It seemed that she did not intend to let Dustless leave. I'm very curious about your ability. Stay and be my subordinate. No matter what your identity is, I can let you get glory and wealth, gold and treasures. There are only things you can't think of, but nothing you can't get. Isteth raised her voice and tempted. In this era where people's lives were as cheap as grass, it was lucky to be able to have a full meal. She believed that Dustless would give up the darkness for the light. Be your subordinate? It sounds good. Turning his head and looking at Isteth, Dustless joked, if you can send me to the position of the Emperor, I can barely be your subordinate. You are looking for death. Isteth was as cold as frost. The murderous intent that had been accumulated for a long time burst out, freezing the flowers and trees around. A layer of ice on the ground suddenly attacked Dustless, trying to turn him into a crystal ice sculpture. I may be your natural enemy. You are good at using ice and I am good at playing with fire. Fate is really cruel. Chapter 1594. Isteth was surprised and stared at Dustless. She did not expect him to say that. She said bluntly, although I don't know what you are talking about, but you are right, fire can extinguish water, but the same water can also extinguish fire, and I still feel that I am better than a little kid. Phew. When the voice fell, a blue streamer came to his face. He could vaguely catch the long blue hair. There was no doubt that this person was Isteth. Isteth is really a battle maniac. Witnessing Isteth's eyes when she saw the prey, Her face was as excited as if she was injected with chicken blood. It gave people the feeling that she found a suitable toy. But your name is really annoying. When it comes to age, I am qualified to be your ancestor. Because of the reason of being a Jubi, Dustless got eternal youth as well as an immortal life. He would never be old, so his age had always been about 17 or 18 years old. Let me show you something. Ketan, he had not used these ordinary ninjutsu for many years. Although Dustless's technique was also a lot rusty, when his death was about to rush, he still threw out a dragon head with a strong momentum. Great fire dragon technique. The dragon head, which was completely composed of flames, roared out and went straight to his death. This kind of trick is useless. The gem-like gorgeous eyes flashed with admiration, and immediately his death snapped her fingers. A huge ice wall condensed in front of her, protecting his death like a shield. Bang bang bang. Although the fire dragon condensed by flames penetrated the ice layer, this large piece of ice was 1 meter thick, and it did not completely penetrate. It was still a few centimeters thick from Isthetha's body. This guy's ability to play with ice is good. If I can give Akiji's ice fruit to her, Isthetha's strength will inevitably be better, but unfortunately, Taigu is always a Taigu. Dustless shook his head. Although Taigu was good, its power was limited. It was not as comprehensive as the devil fruit, and the density of the ice made by Akiji was higher than that of Isteth, and the hardness was higher. Kakaka. Isteth waved her sword and smashed the ice in front of her. Then she turned into a storm and the cold light swept towards Dustless's head. Your speed is very fast. For a human like you to be able to do this is already a miracle. Dustless nodded slightly, glanced at the incoming blade and ignored it with a smile. He simply stood still and deliberately showed a flaw to Isteth. Humph, are you looking down on me? Isthetha's delicate face became colder when she saw this, and the strength of her sword increased by 3 points. Originally, she planned to catch Dustless alive and teach this arrogant boy a good lesson. She did not expect that Dustless was not sensible enough, and now he even dared to push his luck. Poochie. The ice sword cut through Dustless's head and cut it into pieces. Why isn't it bleeding? She looked at Dustless with surprise, but what made Isteth depressed was that Dustless did not move and was not injured. She stared straight at Dustless's wound. The place that should be bloody just had a faint golden light. Then it was perfectly repaired. Dustless had nothing to do with it. You can't even hit my body. Do you understand now who is the natural enemy of whom? When the voice fell, Dustless rose into the air, the flash between his legs was diffused, the golden light covered it, and he immediately aimed at Isthetha's cheek and kicked. Lightspeed kick. Isthetha's pupils shrank, and she quickly blocked with her arms in front of her. At the same time, she gently waved her hand, and the transparent ice shield appeared again in front of her, like a wall in front of Isteth. Kakaka. However, with a crisp sound, the shield condensed by Isteth collapsed in an instant, and the huge flash was all greeted by Isteth. Boom boom boom. The flash did not explode, but turned into a strong impact, and all fell on Isthetha's arms. Phew 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 phew. Isteth, who had never been attacked by such a majestic force, looked pale, and she was kicked 20 or 30 meters away by Dustless like a gust of wind. This guy. Isthetha's face was extremely gloomy, her arms trembled uncontrollably, this seemingly ordinary kick almost broke her bones. I can be sure that there is no prop like Taigu, but how did this guy do it? Does a human have such a great power? Don't be kidding. Even the super dangerous species can't do this. Isteth touched her numb right arm, and after taking a closer look, she found that there was no scar left on her white wrist. If I didn't work hard to improve my strength in recent years, I am afraid that I would be killed by that kick. Thinking of this, Isthetha's face was more heavy and nervous, and even had a hint of depression and vigilance, which had never appeared before. Don't worry. Looking at Isteth, who touched her wrist, Dustless waved his hand and said, I have reduced the power of the lightspeed kick as much as possible. The power will not hurt you. Anyway, you just saved me from the water. Although you're subordinates and you are arrogant, I am not the kind of person who likes to kill. Isthetha's mouth twitched a few times after hearing the words, and she lowered her voice and asked hoarsely, Did you deliberately let me win? What do you think? Dustless seriously spread out his hands and asked calmly, Do you think you are my opponent? Did you just use your own strength to kick me? With your current level, that's impossible. Also, didn't I just say that I'm your natural enemy? Chapter 1595. Isthetha's arms continued to tremble. She looked at Dustless with difficulty. Perhaps because of her natural belligerence, instead of flinching, the corners of her mouth were raised high, showing a charming arc. This girl deserves to be the queen of sadism. She can still smile when encountering an enemy that she can't defeat. Dustless was speechless. He stared at his death with some entanglement. If it was an ordinary person, he would have been thinking about how to escape. Whoosh! A row of ice dregs was shot head-on. The momentum was like a sharp blade. The number was so large that he couldn't deal with it. Especially the front end of the icicle was jumping with piercing cold light. It may even pierce through the bones. Let me enjoy the fun of fighting. Leaving such a sentence, his death followed the icicle and swooped down. I don't have extra time to play with you. It's more suitable to find a place to fill my stomach. Fighting. Avoid it as much as possible. Dustless looked up at the ice dregs that came head-on and moved his fingers gently. Fire release, grand fire annihilation. The sea of fire with a diameter of tens of meters roared out. The red fire rolled toward his death, and the ice dregs were evaporated in the blink of an eye. This guy. His death's beautiful gem-like eyes widened and her mood was a little heavy. To be honest, witnessing the overwhelming flame attack, she was shocked and speechless. No wonder he dares to say that he is my natural enemy. Isthetha's white face was cautious. She immediately stepped on the ground with her feet. Her body ignored the existence of gravity for a moment and flew into the air. Clap, clap, clap. Snapping his fingers a few times in a row, several huge ice meteorites fell from the sky. Flame and ice were two diametrically opposite existences. The moment the ice meteorites appeared, the flame evaporated them, but the moderation of the ice also played a role in cooling down. The sea of fire that was originally monstrous also weakened a lot. Seize this opportunity. Isteth, who was staring at Dustless, rushed to Dustless like lightning. Seeing his careless face as if he was dealing with a passerby, Isteth was furious. This guy really looked down on people too much. Split into two. The ice sword in her hand fell down horizontally, and the cold light went straight to Dustless's head. Isteth smiled in surprise, and her happy face seemed to find Silver's tragic death. However, in the next second she realized that she was very wrong. Clang, clang. The ice sword was not as sharp as expected, but it was unusually slow and ordinary. Looking closely, the cold light was directly caught by Dustless with one hand. Immediately he exerted a little force and Isthetha's ice sword made a caw-caw sound. Isthetha's self-esteem collapsed instantly like this cracking sound. Damn it. Seeing this, Isteth did not admit defeat. Instead, she waved her hand and dense ice swords came to him. You still can't give up? Dustless shook his head. He thought that Isteth would give up after a little blow. He did not expect that the gap between her consciousness and Dustless's made her not give up, but she became braver and braver. She wanted to die together with Dustless. Sorry, I've had enough. Looking cold, Dustless's pupils turned faster, and a black flame seemed to swallow the world. Amaterasu. The black flame was like a black hole. It was born out of nothing. It swallowed all the ice cones that came to him, and even the most basic residue was not left. You want to go? At least leave something for me. Isteth was fierce and she broke out a fierce aura. Her blue hair stood up, and the area within dozens of meters was instantly turned into ice sculptures. Isteth made up her mind and shouted, Mok Botemo. The void was frozen at this moment and everything stopped. Everything in Isthetha's eyes was petrified and could no longer move. Thank you for pleasing me for so long. Since I got the Taigu, you are the first one who forced me to use this trick. Walking to the front of Dustless, Isteth grabbed his chin, and the ice sword in her hand stabbed out. A huge bloody hole suddenly appeared in Dustless's body. It's over. Isteth wiped her sweat tiredly. After a few seconds, the time of her unique skill was also over. Looking at the body on the ground, when she was planning to bury it, she was suddenly dumbfounded. What is this situation? Looking at the wood on the ground, Isthetha's tone increased several times. The body that was pierced by herself suddenly became a pierced wood. Genjutsu. This is Genjutsu. Dustless's lazy tone came out from another direction, and he walked to Isteth with a chuckle. He said, Your strength is good, but your spiritual power is not good. Genjutsu? Isthetha's face was stiff when she heard the words. She resisted the depression in her heart and asked loudly, When did it start? Why didn't I notice it? There is no need to answer this question. When you saw my Sharingan it started. Dustless explained, and one of his hands had been inserted into Isthetha's clothes. Get your claws off me. Isteth noticed the big hand in her arms, and she couldn't help but be furious. She wanted to kick Dustless away, but she found that her body was as weak as if it was emptied. She had no extra strength to deal with Dustless. The big move just now had already been hit by Dustless's genjutsu, and it consumed all the strength of his death. Found it? At this time, Dustless's eyes brightened, and the big hand in Istetha's arms was also taken out. Of course, there was also Istetha's own banknotes. No matter who you are, you need enough money. Goodbye, Mrs. Death. By the way, let me introduce myself. My name is Wu Qin, not the prince you are talking about. Dustless explained while looking for the wallet, and his back gradually disappeared in Istetha's beautiful eyes. Chapter 1596. Istetha's cold eyes were dotted with hostility, and she had an unlucky expression. It was the first time for her to be robbed, and she played the role of the victim. Dustless, let's wait and see. She slammed the ground with all her strength. Ignoring the weakness of her body, Istetha gathered her strength and stood up. Dustless, the strongest enemy she had ever met in her life, was right in front of her. How could she lie on the ground like a coward? But as soon as she stood up straight, Istetha helplessly found that her body seemed to be carrying a mountain. She had to bow again, and it was difficult to move. At this moment, even a worm could run faster than her. Lady Istetha. At the same time, the three beasts also woke up from their coma. They looked at each other and quietly examined Istetha, who was in a cold sweat. Their mouths squirmed slightly. Needless to say, they knew the final result. Istetha lost. Damn, is that guy so strong? He is obviously just a 17 or 18-year-old boy toy. The three beasts were secretly angry. They didn't expect Dustless to be so abnormal that he could defeat the strongest in the Empire and even the strongest in the world, the sadist General Istetha. You guys strengthen your training for me. I have a hunch that I will meet him again. Istetha ordered coldly. There was not much disappointment on her face. Instead, she was a little happy. Dustless's sudden rise made her boring life have some entertainment additives, which was a blessing in disguise. Boom boom boom. The violent roar resounded through the world, and a huge fire burned in the air. Are all the people in this godforsaken place dangerous? Turning his head and looking at the mountain of corpses and blood behind him, Dustless frowned. In less than half an hour he had crushed hundreds of dangerous species. Even several super dangerous species passing by during the period were killed by him. The direction of the imperial capital should be there. Looking up at the super large city in front of him, Dustless's eyes extended to the limit, and the scene dozens of kilometers away could be seen at a glance. A sizable city appeared in Dustless's eyes. There was no doubt that it was the so-called imperial capital. About another half an hour later, Wu Qin had just arrived at this decaying city. He found that countless people were staring at him with panicked eyes. They immediately fled for fear of not being able to avoid him. What's going on? I'm not a malefic star. Also, what's with this situation? Do I need to be this unlucky? Dustless complained gloomily. Looking at the figures in front of him, he dashed forward and grabbed one of them. He grabbed the yellow-haired, yellow-faced middle-aged man and asked, "Why did you run when you met me? Give me a reasonable explanation, or I can guarantee that you will be torn into pieces in the next second." As his voice fell, Dustless slightly released his killing intent. The man's face instantly turned pale and he stared at Dustless in fear. He pointed at the notice board not far away, which was full of wanted posters, and said timidly, "You are wanted." "I see." Dustless heard the words and let go of the middle-aged man in his hand, and immediately walked slowly to the notice board. It was a wanted poster. After a few glances, Dustless found a young man who looked quite similar to himself. "This is the bad prince that Istetha said." Dustless frowned, and he felt that he was shot even though he was lying down. This person was similar to himself in appearance. Let's find a place to eat first. Glancing at the wanted poster next to him, Dustless turned his head and left. His observation hockey spread out and soon found a suitable restaurant. However, Dustless just walked in and scared away a group of people like a jinx. What made him most speechless was that even the boss fled with him. Boom. Immediately after, Wu Qin, who was listening in all directions, realized that there was an uninvited guest. A large number of soldiers scrambled to catch him. Their ferocious appearance was extremely angry. "You are a wanted criminal and you dare to wander under our eyes. Do you need to be so unscrupulous? You are too arrogant. Are you sure it's him?" At the same time, several obscure figures were hiding in the dark alley, staring at Dustless. These people were like dark creatures that couldn't be seen. They were all wearing black robes as if they couldn't be exposed to the light. From the wanted poster it should be him, but no one knows whether it is him or not. After all, no one has seen him and all his guards are dead. Taking a closer look, these people dressed in black robes were none other than the famous assassination organization of the imperial capital, Night Raid. But, does an imperial prince have anything to do with us? The young man with green hair asked, and there was a hint of rejection in his words. Although the other members didn't say much, their eyes were a little sad. Oh, this is a long story. As the boss, Najenda explained, this prince is actually the real heir to the emperor, but he was pulled down by the minister. Now he is still being chased. If we can get him to join our revolutionary army, it will be of great help in the future. Can you understand what I mean? Najenda continued, this prince is very important to us. If his news is exposed, we can attack the empire from public opinion, and our revolution will have more advantages. Then let's do it. I will personally bury those rotten soldiers. The black-haired beautiful girl with a katana said calmly, and her eyes were cold. When the entire Night Raid team was about to attack, they quickly found that they were doing something unnecessary, and others didn't need help at all. Chapter 1597. Dustless stared at the soldiers who swarmed over. If possible, he didn't want to attack ordinary humans, but the premise was that they didn't provoke him. Get out of my way. Looking around at the soldiers who surrounded him, Dustless said coldly, you'd better get out of my way before I get angry, otherwise you. However, there were too many self-righteous people in this world. Before Dustless finished his words, this group of people rushed to shout. Bastard, it's just a wanted person, how dare he be so arrogant? Catch this guy and beat him up. Teach him a lesson. Before Dustless finished speaking, the tide-like voices covered Dustless's voice. These idiots pointed at Dustless and scolded him. In their opinion, this guy was a dead man. How could a person who was targeted by Minister Ernest still be alive? It's hard to negotiate. The light in his hand floated. Dustless turned into a flash of light and rushed in like thunder. He was not an indecisive person. Since he gave this group of people a way to live, then they should all die. Pucci, Pucci, Pucci. With a wave of his arm, light flickered. With every swing of his blade, countless people were chopped to pieces. A one-sided massacre began mercilessly. Shoot. Someone screamed with a sharp voice, full of fear. Damn, this guy was too scary. He looked harmless on the surface, but according to the current one-sided situation, he was simply a living killing machine. F***ck, a person could be cut into two halves with a casual slash. This was the complete opposite of the weak prince in the intelligence reports. Cough, cough, cough. At this moment, the people of the Night Raid were also shocked, especially Scarlet Pupil, who planned to take Dustless away. She was a little dizzy and looked at Najenda subconsciously. Not only Scarlet Pupil but other members of the Night Raid also had the same look. The puzzled look was obviously saying, is this a person who is being hunted? Are you sure it's that prince? Everyone, wait a minute. Najenda was embarrassed by the crowd, and at the same time, she stared at Dustless in confusion. This decisive killing and good strength were not what the prince had. No matter what, let's take him away first. Najenda broke out her aura and immediately led the members of the Night Raid to the place where Dustless was located. It had become hell on earth. The sharpness of the heavenly sword of gathering clouds was too terrifying, and Dustless's strength was too great, to the point that everyone was split in half. What do you guys think of this guy's skills? Najenda suddenly asked. The guy killed so many Imperial soldiers, which is equivalent to completely offending the Empire. Even if he is not the prince, he can also be a member of our Night Raid. Very strong. Bullet gave a thumbs up and praised, I'm sure he's better than me. He slaughtered them so cleanly and without any hesitation. He treated the old, the weak, the sick, and the disabled equally. If he wants to be an assassin, he's definitely qualified. I can feel that he's very strong, Leona chimed in. Although it's good, it's not as good as my Taigu. Mine snorted proudly. It's very clean and his strength is also very strong. Akame nodded, she was also a master of using the sword. Dustless did not have any gorgeous swordsmanship, it was just the purest strength. That is to say, you all think he is very suitable? Najenda showed a satisfied smile. She also thought that Dustless was good, and now he still had a grudge with the Empire, which also meant that it was impossible to stand on the side of the Empire in the future. For a character like Dustless, if he joined the Empire Army, he would definitely be a terrible character like his death in the future, then the Revolutionary Army would have to pay a heavy price to deal with him. At the same time, Dustless also discovered the people of the Night Raid early. In fact, when they hid, Dustless saw the movements of several people. No murderous intent. Staring at several people who came, Dustless did not feel the cold temperament of murderous intent, and he was too lazy to entangle. When he was about to turn and leave, Najenda stopped him. The voice in her mouth stopped abruptly and Najenda didn't know how to call him. My name is Dustless. Glancing at Najenda, Dustless replied faintly, What's the matter? I don't seem to have anything to do with your night raid and I'm not rich. The people of the night raid looked at each other when they heard the words. Their targets seemed to be those corrupt local tyrants, so many people regarded them as robbers. Are you the emperor of the empire? I'm not a prince, sorry you found the wrong person. Interrupted impatiently, Dustless was depressed. The feeling of being attacked while lying down was really not good. Inexplicably, there were a bunch of enemies, anyone would feel depressed. Is it? Najenda was not surprised when she heard the words. The information she got said that the prince was weak, and there were even rumors that he was dead. I hope you can become a member of the Night Raid and work together for this country. I promise you. Without waiting for Najenda to finish speaking, Dustless didn't even think about it and directly agreed. He didn't even have a place to stay now. It was a good choice to join the Night Raid temporarily. What's more, he had become a wanted criminal. Since this city couldn't accommodate him, then he just needed to turn the city upside down and change the dynasty. So straightforward? Not only the members of the Night Raid were stunned, but Najenda was also stunned. She thought that Dustless would deliberately refuse, but she didn't expect this guy to agree so easily. Chapter 1598. So straightforward? Not only were the members of the Night Raid in a daze, but Najenda was also stunned. She thought that Dustless would deliberately refuse, but who knew that this guy agreed so casually? The members of the Night Raid were full of doubts. This was too fake. He joined the Night Raid without any hesitation. Did their boss's charm index increase? That's not right. Even if my charm index increased, it would be me. How could it be the boss? Leonai whispered, and Najenda happened to hear it clearly. She immediately glared at her fiercely. What's your purpose? Najenda asked cautiously. Although she didn't believe that Dustless was a spy, there were some necessary situations that must be clarified. Assassins had their own rules, especially the Night Raid, which was not an ordinary assassin organization. They were a serious revolutionary army, and the identity of the members must be clear. Purpose? Hearing this, Wuxia was stunned. He really didn't have any purpose. He subconsciously raised his head and looked at the huge palace. I don't have any great purpose or goal. However, if I have to find a purpose, it's there. Pointing at the beautiful palace, Dustless said coldly, Inexplicably wanted me, it's unforgivable. The members of the Night Raid looked at each other in dismay. Although it was hard for them to accept Wuxia, this weirdo they could barely understand. Just because his appearance was close to that prince, he was wanted, and they even indiscriminately sent people to kill him. If this happened to anyone, it would be hard for them to accept. It was also understandable that he could take revenge on the empire or the ministers. Quick, don't let those people escape. At this moment, there was a sound of hurried footsteps, and a large number of people ran at the same time. The ground shook slightly and groups of soldiers rushed like hungry wolves. The mission is completed, everyone retreat. Najenda didn't choose to stay. After all, this was the imperial capital, the enemy's nest. No matter how they fought, they would lose in the end. The outskirts of the empire were filled with beautiful scenery. 3 days later, at the base of the Night Raid. At this moment, Najenda, as the boss, was sitting in her own position. She spat out her eyes comfortably and held a piece of paper full of information in her hand. After 3 days, the members of Night Raid had accepted Dustless as an intruder. What's done can't be undone. They had no choice but to accept the boss's orders. Furthermore, Dustless's strength was not bad. It was impossible for him to drag them down. He was also very strong. He had even given pointers to Leo, Scarlet Eye, and the others. Therefore, everyone was quite fond of Dustless. Only Lubbock wanted to cry but had no tears. Everyone was curious about Dustless, a newcomer, so he was inevitably isolated. The target of the mission has been confirmed. It's a noble family in the imperial capital. Their methods are extremely vile. After a while, Najenda said angrily, they used sweet words to deceive others, brought passers-by to their home, and then tortured them to death. Unforgivable. Rotten to the core. All these rubbish must be removed. Living rubbish will only pollute the air. After the revolutionary army dominates the empire in the future, it will not be so rotten and sad. Boring. In fact, it's all the same. Dustless smiled and said nothing. In fact, there was nothing to despise. Although the empire was rotten to the core, the Revolutionary Army was probably not much better. Because greed was one of the human nature, this was uncontrollable unless all the humans in the world were completely wiped out. What's more, the Revolutionary Army was an organization. There must be internal intrigue. With the slow passage of time, decay was also a matter of time. In the end, you still become the nourishment of my infinite Tsukuyami. Dustless raised his eyebrows slightly and said to himself, I remember that guy Tatsumi seemed to take this opportunity to join the night raid. Anyway, I have nothing to do. It's better to go out and play this time. Is everyone going to attack? Scarlet, I asked very plainly, but there was a deep pain in her words. She held the katana in her right hand and seemed to be eager to kill the family. Najenda was slightly silent when she heard the words. She looked at Dustless. The other members were all veterans of the night raid. They had performed as many as dozens of missions. Of course, I have no problem. Dustless shrugged when he saw it. What a joke, no matter how strong the enemy was, even if it was a god, how could he be afraid of an ordinary human? That's the best. Najenda's eyes were cold. The evil that justice can't punish, only we can come and kill it with a sword. The night was dark and windy, killing and arson were everywhere. In a luxurious castle like a villa, a few black shadows like crows suddenly flashed in the sky. Everyone's eyes were filled with crimson bloodthirsty light. Several people ignored the existence of gravity and stood quietly in the void. Only people with excellent eyesight and dynamic ability could catch the negligible thin line. This family is really evil. Looking up, staring at the abandoned warehouse in the distance, Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. The air was filled with the chill of decay and desolation. Through the vision of Tensigan, Dustless could see at least hundreds of corpses. Don't leave a single one alive. As soon as Scarlet Eye's voice fell, the people of the night raid jumped from the line and launched a one-sided bloody massacre. All the living creatures that they saw were killed. After all, they were assassins. There was no distinction between men and women, old and young. All the people of this family were killed. Chapter 1599. All, in a word, it was enough to kill one person. If there were two, he would kill a pair. It's really boring, killing those weak people is just an excuse to leave it to them. As for me, in the luxurious villa, Dustless wandered around. The life of this family was quite luxurious. The castle covered a large area, and there were countless corridors and corners. Strange, where did that guy go? Dustless murmured secretly and carefully searched every room. He was looking for a person, Tatsumi. However, it seemed that there was no trace of Tatsumi even after searching the whole villa. Did I remember it wrong? Dustless said to himself. These were the memories of hundreds of years ago in his mind. After all, he had traveled for hundreds of years. It was normal for his memory to have some deviations. On the other side, the night raid was killing this family with all their strength. There were too many people in this family, especially countless servants and professional soldiers. Obviously, they had a big background. Killing people was fast when everyone did it, but there were also some people who were lazy, such as Dustless. He had been wandering around in boredom, and he didn't kill anyone for a long time. Hey. Suddenly there was a dissatisfied complaint behind him. Dustless was stunned. He turned his head and saw a pretty girl with a pink double ponytail. Her appearance was delicate, her facial features were flawless, her bright eyes were as eye-catching as the moon, and her pink skirt was quite wonderful with her young body. The girl's figure was not plump, but it was undeniable that she was a person who knew how to dress herself very well. Her short body was not disappointing. Combined with her pink skirt, it made people's eyes brighten. This girl with an extraordinary appearance was mine, the night raid's night raid. Ah, I'm performing a task, didn't you see? Dustless asked with a smile. Performing a task? Looking at Dustless suspiciously, Mine looked around and asked, Where are the people you killed? I have been seeing you walking like an old man. You are lazy, right? Mine asked loudly with her chest out. Dustless was powerful, but he turned a deaf ear to the fleeing crowd around him. What was he if not being lazy? Seriously, your breasts aren't big, what's there to stick out? Dustless lowered his head and complained. His voice was as soft as a mosquito, but he was too close to Mine, so all these words fell into her ears. Mine stomped her feet angrily and immediately said with a straight face, I'm going to report this to the boss, saying that you are slacking off in the process of performing the task. As soon as the voice fell, Mine looked at Dustless with delight. Her proud look was obviously saying, Beg me? However, Dustless did not pay attention to her. No, I'm not slacking off. I'm protecting you. Dustless glanced at the blurry black figure walking deeper into the forest and said calmly, as a sniper, your close combatability is too weak. I'll follow you and be in charge of close combat. Protect me? What a load of nonsense. Mine hummed proudly and said loudly, your excuse is useless. You didn't kill anyone. I will report all to the boss. I didn't use your reward for this mission. After saying that, Mine turned and left. However, at the moment when she just turned around, a black figure with flashing red eyes came quickly. It almost came to the front of Mine in an instant, and the big sword with cold light slashed toward Mine's head. All this happened in a flash so that Mine was a little dazed. Your sniping is good, but your close combat is SOSO. If the enemy gets close to you, the disadvantage is too big. Dustless glanced at the attacker who was barely good, and flicked a light from his finger. Laser. A straight beam of light shot out and went straight to the person. There was suddenly a light on the head, and it was killed by the light from Dustless's fingertips. The person fell down unwillingly, and the big sword was a little distance away from crushing Mine. Damn it. Mine, who came back to her senses, scolded her carelessness. She just quarreled with Dustless so she didn't notice the approaching attacker for the first time. If it weren't for Dustless, maybe her head would be separated from her body. I reluctantly recognize you. Mine said with a red face, and she was quite unwilling. Dustless stared at Mine maliciously after hearing the words. He put Mine in a checkmate and said with a smile, it's a big problem to be absent-minded when performing the task. I will report it to the boss as it is. You heartless guy. Mine pointed at Dustless's nose and scolded. Her hard-earned good impression of Dustless disappeared instantly. Dustless didn't say much after hearing the words. He just looked at the warehouse in the distance quietly. There was a strange color in his eyes that was difficult to detect. He vaguely understood why he didn't meet Tatsumi. Is it possible that Tatsumi was caught and tortured by this family? Dustless looked contemplative. The character of this family was so dark and cold that they deceived all the poor people who slept on the street into their home and then tortured them severely. Phew. At the same time, all the members of the night raid completed the task and appeared one after another. There is still a dirty place that has not been solved. We can retreat after burning the warehouse full of rotten smell. Pointing to the abandoned warehouse in the distance, Scarlet Pupil took the lead to rush there. I hope that Tatsumi dies. Following the footsteps of Scarlet Pupil, Dustless prayed silently. I can smell a disgusting stench from afar. Leonette took the lead to smash the door of the abandoned warehouse. As Dustless had guessed before, a devastated wail entered the eyes of several people. Come and save me, my name is Tatsumi. Chapter 1600. Come and save me, my name is Tatsumi. Dustless was taken aback by this sudden voice, and immediately rushed to the source. A miserable young man with wounds all over his body came into view. His hair was disheveled and his entire body was covered with whip marks. The ghastly wounds were lacerated, and his flesh was badly mangled. However, the youth's eyes were bright and full of expression. Although he was severely injured, his strong will did not collapse. This kid is very tough. Dustless sighed to himself. He could see at a glance that Tatsumi was just physically tortured, and his physique was still very majestic. Clang 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 clang. Bullet raised his hand and cut off the chain on Tatsumi's body. He was surprised. After being tortured so severely, you can still live so tenaciously. It seems that you have received good training. Yes. Leonie also nodded slightly, thinking that this handsome boy was quite pleasing to the eye. You don't even know Tatsumi? Glancing at Leonie in surprise, Dustless found that Leonie didn't know Tatsumi. The scene in the original work probably didn't happen because of Dustless's sudden rise. So now Tatsumi was directly tortured by this perverted family. Cough cough cough. At this moment, there was a violent cough in the cell which immediately attracted Tatsumi's attention. He cried and shouted, Ayas, how do you feel? Are you okay? He is incurable. Dustless came over and glanced at him and explained, he is implanted with the virus in his body. His face is pale and weak. Although he can still hold on, he is already dying. This is just the final radiance of the setting sun. He can't hold on for long. He is being observed like a white mouse, and his internal organs are corroded. You also know medical skills? Scarlet Eye and others were surprised. The members of the night raid often went out to perform tasks. Sometimes injuries were inevitable, and there was no suitable doctor among them. I just know a little bit. Dustless nodded slightly and then said softly, if you are sick in the future, you can ask me for help. The patient is right in front of you. How dare you call yourself a doctor when you can't treat him? Tatsumi, who was desperate, roared. He was deeply shocked by the departure of his best friend. Back then he had come here with a dream. Who would have thought that the imperial capital would have such a cruel start? Don't be unreasonable. Chi Tong and the others frowned. His internal organs had already been destroyed. Only a god would be able to save him. Let's retreat. Glancing slightly at Tatsumi, Dustless was too lazy to talk nonsense with this kid. Now he was just a madman. Cough, cough, cough. Wait a minute. At this moment Aiz, who was in Tatsumi's arms, suddenly opened his mouth and begged, I hope you can take Tatsumi with you. This country seems hopeless. Everyone is a monster in human skin. This, Scarlet Eye and others frowned when they heard the words. Their task did not include this unexpected task, but it seemed inappropriate to refuse the last plea of a dead person. This guy is not bad. If we strengthen his training, he can be of great use in the future. Brant, who was kind and generous, supported Tatsumi. Although some things have deviated, what should happen will still happen. Dustless sighed in his heart. He knew that Tatsumi joining the night raid was unstoppable. Although these people were assassins, not everyone was as experienced as Dustless. In the end, their inner kindness did not abandon them. It looks good on the surface. Leone also nodded slightly, reluctantly agreeing with Brant's plan. Tatsumi was not bad. After being tortured, he was still energetic. Obviously, this piece of rotten jade was well polished. Then take him back for the time being. As for the specifics, it is up to the boss to decide. Scarlet Eye finally kicked the ball to Najenda. This kind of thing was not something she could decide. It could only be handled by Najenda. Lucky boy. Dustless was too lazy to say more. Looking at Tatsumi's relaxed face, this guy may think that joining the night raid is a good thing. There will be too many opportunities to clean him up in the future. Let's retreat. In the dark night, Dustless took the lead to turn into a black shadow and integrated into the darkness. The base of the night raid was brightly lit, and everyone gathered together. Tatsumi? Najenda sat in her position belonging to the boss, staring at Tatsumi, who was obviously still a teenager, with a little doubt and hesitation in her eyes. Boss, let me deal with this guy. After a month, I promise to train a different Tatsumi. Brant stood up and guaranteed. After all, Tatsumi was pulled in by him. It was too shameful to be kicked out. This guy is also a novice. Why do you have so many restrictions on me? Is it possible that he is handsome and can be recognized? Tatsumi stood up and questioned Dustless. Tatsumi, this kid is talking about it. Dustless had a feeling of being shot while lying down. Yes, I am more handsome than you. If you don't believe me, you can ask everyone. Dustless raised his head proudly. His white skin was smooth like silk, and his facial features were extremely evenly distributed. He completely defeated Tatsumi, this super scum. Cough, cough, cough. If we're talking about looks, Wuxia is more handsome than you. Brant stood up to help, and at the same time he secretly scolded Tatsumi for being brainless. Why use your disadvantages to compare with others' advantages? Are you retarded? You? Tatsumi's face turned red when he heard the words, and he stared at Dustless indignantly. Suddenly he felt that this face was an eyesore. It was simply a synonym for a jinx. Looking at each other can be contaminated with bad luck. Chapter 1601. You still want to fight with me? Looking at Tatsumi contemptuously, Dustless looked down on this guy. His companion's death could only be attributed to his incompetence. If he was a little smarter, this would not have happened. Tatsumi didn't need to have a high IQ, but he didn't have the least defense, so it was understandable that he was killed. You seem to have a problem with me. Staring at Tatsumi with a smile, Dustless said bluntly, I am the same as you. Just 3 days ago I was still unemployed. Tatsumi snorted. It seemed that he disdained to talk to Dustless. Very arrogant. Dustless frowned when he saw this. Tatsumi gave people the feeling that he had eaten gunpowder. Why don't we have a fight? Then I think you have nothing to say. Will I be afraid of you? Come on. Tatsumi rolled his eyes and looked directly at Dustless's eyes without fear. In his cognition, Dustless had white skin, a handsome face and a rich appearance. He looked like a noble young master, not like a professional assassin at all. Therefore he thought that Dustless was just a facade. That's enough. Seeing the possibility of a fight, Boss Najenda had to stand up and speak. Tetsumi's words also make sense. Dustless also joined the night raid 3 days ago. You two will learn the law of being an assassin with Akame tomorrow. Let's disperse now. She waved her hand and the crowd dispersed. Damn it, I will compete with you privately. As a newcomer, I want to see what's the difference between you. Tatsumi clenched his fist with an expression of dissatisfaction. All in all, Tatsumi didn't feel that he was worse than Dustless. Staring at the direction where Dustless disappeared, Tatsumi also chased, but he didn't take a few steps. A burly figure like a mountain blocked in front of Tatsumi. Brother? The person who suddenly appeared was Bullet. Because Bullet pulled Tatsumi into the night raid, the relationship between the two was not bad. Bullet also took care of Tatsumi. Tatsumi, go back and rest. You will learn from Akame tomorrow morning. I will train you at night, Bullet said seriously. Tomorrow? Tatsumi nodded first and immediately did not hide it. He said directly, I am going to challenge Dustless now. That guy looks like a young master. I don't think he is special. Challenge him? Bullet's mouth twitched a few times, but Tatsumi didn't notice it. That's right. That guy is too arrogant. Also, everyone clearly doesn't recognize me. I want to use that guy to prove my strength. Tatsumi's eyes were like torches. In his heart, he regarded Dustless as a stepping stone. Idiot, don't be fooled by Dustless's appearance. He's actually very strong. Bullet said solemnly, and he was speechless. Tatsumi obviously didn't know what it meant to not judge a book by its cover. Don't be fooled by Dustless's handsome appearance. He doesn't look like a combatant. Although he looks harmless on the surface like a knowledgeable scholar, but remember, all of this is superficial. Speaking of this, Bullet's tone was low, and his eyes were vaguely filled with respect. Is he stronger than brother? I heard that big sister Leonie said that you are known as the 100 Killer. Tatsumi's face was full of admiration. No matter which world, people respected the strong. Idiot. Bullet smiled bitterly and explained, 3 days ago when we went to meet Dustless to join the night raid, he killed hundreds of elite soldiers in just a few minutes. Leonie didn't tell you this. She didn't tell you this because she didn't want to break your confidence. Killed hundreds of elite soldiers in a few minutes? Tatsumi showed a shocked expression, opened his mouth, and finally stared at Bullet's helpless cheeks and closed his mouth sullenly. He was choked by Bullet's words. In the dense jungle, 3 figures stood side by side. What does catching fish have to do with being a killer? It's digression. Tatsumi asked speechlessly, always feeling that he was used as a cook. This can't be helped. In the night raid, I am responsible for everyone's favorite food. Scarlet Pupil said as she walked, holding the roasted calf of dangerous species in her hand. Is this guy really as strong as brother said? With a sigh, Tatsumi secretly looked at Dustless, who had nothing to do, and his brows frowned. It's best to find a chance to test him. Tatsumi thought so. Soon the 3 came to a vast pool. The water was very clear and very cool, and they could clearly see the swimming fish in the depths of the water droplets. You two can start. Pointing to the pool below, Scarlet Pupil continued to gnaw the meat in her hand and explained, today's lunch is to eat fish. The person who catches less has no food. No food? What? Tatsumi was stunned when he heard the words, and he jumped directly into the water without taking off his clothes. It was really boring. On the other hand, Wuxia was just sitting lazily at the edge of the pond, teasing the little fishes that swam by comfortably as if he had nothing to do with it. He had a look of indifference. If you sit like this, there will be no food for lunch. Scarlet Pupil kindly reminded him. Anyway, I have lived for hundreds of years, let Tatsumi eat. Dustless had a magnanimous expression on his face. Although he said so, he smiled slyly in his heart. There seems to be a dangerous species under the water, an unexpected surprise. Staring at the super big fish full of fangs in the water droplets, Dustless smiled even more. Chapter 1602. Deep at the bottom of the lake, Tatsumi swam around vigorously trying to catch these big fish, but he was obviously too inexperienced. This kind of fish was not an ordinary fish on the market. It was very vigilant. Tatsumi did not catch one but attracted the attention of a dangerous big fish with fangs. While he stared at other fish, he did not know that others had become others' dinner. Gulp. Looking at the right time, this super dangerous big fish took advantage of the situation. His big mouth with fangs that could bite steel went straight to Tatsumi. Tatsumi, leave quickly, you are being watched. Not everyone was as evil as Dustless. Scarlet Pupil just caught the dangerous species and stood up to remind Tatsumi. Tatsumi was shocked when he heard the words. He quickly turned his head and saw a dangerous species rushing toward him. Plop. At the critical moment, Tatsumi struggled to move his body and barely escaped from the tiger's mouth. This stupid fish. Dustless scolded angrily when he saw the situation. His eyes flashed with a cunning look. He thought in his heart, if you can't do it, let me help you. His pupils rippled with a considerable amount of eye power. The dangerous fish at the bottom of the water was suddenly controlled by Dustless. Tonight's dinner will be yours. After escaping a blow, Tatsumi's confidence soared. He decisively took out the steel sword tied to his back. Idiot, come up quickly. This dangerous species at the bottom of the water has an absolute advantage. Scarlet Pupil nervously reminded. Cough. Scarlet Pupil, there is no need to worry. Let this kid suffer. When he is in danger, we will teach him a lesson. Dustless took Scarlet Pupil's soft arm and smiled maliciously. Scarlet Pupil had taken off her top and bottom, revealing her smooth and delicate skin. Her figure was delicate, and her cleavage was unexpectedly high at a young age. Dustless did not expect Scarlet Pupil to suddenly take off her clothes, and he was a little stunned for a while. What are you looking at? Chi Tong's clear eyes were filled with doubt. She subconsciously looked down at her body, thinking that she had been stained with something dirty. When she met Dustless's gaze, she couldn't help but blush. Cough, cough, cough. Hurry up and put on your clothes. Leave the task of saving Tatsumi to me. Dustless patted his chest and promised. It was just a dangerous species. At the same time, the war at the bottom of the sea came to an end. Plop. The dangerous species controlled by Dustless, with a super tail swing, hit Tatsumi and made him vomit blood. Even because the force was too strong, it directly threw Tatsumi to the shore and heavily hit the ground. Tsk. Tatsumi is really embarrassed. Chi Tong and Dustless walked to the front of Tatsumi and looked at the bruised Tatsumi. Dustless was fine, but Chi Tong could not tolerate it. This is all because of your arrogance. If this was a one-off mission, you might have caused the entire team to be wiped out. Chi Tong's tone was extremely serious, completely different from her usual naive self. Tatsumi's mouth squirmed when he heard the words and he lowered his head in shame. Sorry, I was impulsive. Fise. Dustless smacked his lips in an extremely harsh manner, silently mocking Tatsumi. You. Tatsumi raised his eyes and looked at Dustless. His contemptuous eyes seemed to say, why are you so useless? You can't even deal with a fish. Catch it if you have the guts. Tatsumi said indignantly, otherwise please shut your mouth. You will be hungry with me at noon. Dustless did not catch any fish now. Dustless. Chi Tong's gaze also swept to Dustless, looking forward to his method. Catch it? It's very simple. Unexpectedly, Dustless suddenly sat on the ground and stared at the dangerous big fish in the water with clear eyes. He explained, this is a dangerous species called sword-bone fish. It is quite dangerous. It is as terrible as its name. Its bones can be used to make swords. At the same time, its defense is very strong. Let alone in the water, even on land, it is difficult to hurt it. After all, you can't do it. Tatsumi's shattered confidence finally recovered a little. No, it's actually very simple to catch them. Dustless showed a meaningful smile and said faintly, this kind of super dangerous species is very strange. Due to its strong strength, the food that it replenishes is not proportional to its consumption, so it has a period of dormancy to recover its physical strength. It's almost time. Why do you know so clearly and so knowledgeable? Tatsumi and Chi Tong were both stunned and quite surprised. Girl. Just at this moment, an extremely human-like voice suddenly sounded. Looking over, it was indeed as Wuxia had said. This dangerous species of big fish was actually snoring on the surface of the lake. Good opportunity. Tatsumi's eyes lit up. He wanted to catch the dangerous species, but the tingling all over his body made him unable to move. On the contrary, Dustless looked at him with a smile and said, you can train if you are not strong enough, but it's your fault if you are uneducated. Eat less snacks and read more books in the future. Damn bastard. Looking at Dustless who left, Tatsumi looked unlucky. He seemed to have become a negative example. Dustless is right. You have to know how to apply what you have learned. He has read a lot of books these days. His learning ability is very strong. Chi Tong looked at Dustless admiringly. The biggest difference between a smart person and a fool was that he would apply everything he had learned to reality. 10,000 Mammoth Heaven. A strong gravitational force was emitted from his hand, and the sleeping dangerous species was suddenly caught by Dustless. Let's go back. Dustless stretched his body and said lazily. The dangerous big fish was floating in the sky. It was particularly shocking in the eyes of Tatsumi and Chi Tong. Chapter 1603. At noon it was time for lunch at the base of the night raid. Many members of the night raid were eating around the table. Dustless was naturally among them, but Tatsumi was miserable. He stood aside with bandages all over his body and watched the people eating, drooling. But no one cared about him. Who let him fail his mission? In the end it was Dustless who benefited. Najenda, who heard about the incident, not only did not sympathize with Tatsumi, but she secretly scolded that he was hopeless. In the water, fighting with dangerous fish species, wasn't this a stupid behavior? For a time, Tatsumi became the villain boss and became the focus of everyone's attack. Dustless smiled and said nothing. He was attacking Tatsumi comfortably while watching the show. Bullet also had a headache. After all, he promised to train Tatsumi in a month. Now it seemed that there was some pressure. If I can't defeat Tatsumi in a month, my reputation will be ruined. Looking up at the ceiling, Bullet suddenly regretted. He was obviously digging a hole to bury himself. Not good. At this moment, Lubbock suddenly exclaimed and said in a deep voice, "Our base was invaded." The target of the sneak attack was still 1 or 2 people, but there were as many as 7 or 8 people. Good job. Najenda blew a smoke ring and ordered in a cold voice, "It's probably those aliens. They dare to go deep alone, which is worthy of praise, but they chose the wrong opponent. Due to the urgency of the situation, the night raid, all members are dispatched." As the boss, Najenda's voice just fell. All the members of the night raid were dispatched urgently. Everyone was obviously experienced and jumped out of the window. Only Dustless continued to eat as if nothing had happened. This time all members are dispatched. Looking at Dustless, who was standing still, Najenda repeated again, "For an assassin, if you are too lazy, your body will rust." No. Dustless just shook his finger and said, "Boss, the more shrewd the eagle is, it usually hides its sharp claws. When it is critical, it will show its ferocious side. So, this kind of small thing can be done by them." That's true. Thinking of Dustless's record in the capital, Najenda also felt that she was overqualified. Although Dustless was a newcomer, his strength was definitely second to none in the night raid. Just now, the boss was talking to Leona about something. It should be about another quest. Dustless asked calmly, "I heard that recently there's a guard captain named Oka. That guy has done a lot of bad things. The mission we received this time should be related to him." "How did you guess?" Najenda looked horrified. "That's simple." Dustless smiled calmly. "First of all, the corrupt officials of the Empire have always been the first target of the night raid. Secondly, that Appa has done a lot of bad things and has countless enemies. I heard that the night raid had accepted the mission to assassinate Oka before, but the mission ended in failure. It's right to invite you to join night raid." Najenda showed a satisfied smile and then sighed. "To be honest, his death has solved the war with a few races at the border in advance. Now she is on her way to the capital. She may return to the capital in a day or 2. So the boss is going to kill some scum in advance?" Dustless asked and affirmed, "I'm afraid that his death will rush back when she heard that I was in the capital." After all, Dustless bullied her once. It was normal for this woman with a strong desire for battle to want to retaliate. Yes, so these days we should try to eradicate those scum who have no conscience. Najenda's eyes were like torches, shining with bright colors. "Let me deal with it." Looking at the blue void through the window, Dustless took the initiative to volunteer. He had no good feelings for this deceitful empire. They inexplicably wanted to arrest him. Dustless naturally wanted to retaliate. Of course there is no problem. There is also an oil merchant who colluded with Oka. This time we will also kill him. As for the specific candidates to carry out this mission, it will be Akame and Leone, plus you and Tatsumi. Leone is familiar with the capital. Where to ambush Oka and the oil merchant, you guys decide by yourselves. Taking a deep breath, Najenda finally ordered. Her original intention was to let Dustless train Tatsumi. Tatsumi, who had not been baptized by the battlefield, was always a greenhouse flower. Of course no problem. Wu Chen's smile became more and more terrifying. It made people's hair stand on end. He didn't have a good impression of Tatsumi. He even hated this guy. He didn't like him. It would be best if he had a chance to get rid of him. On the other side, Tatsumi was trembling, and an indescribable chill spread all over his body. Why do I feel like I am being stared at by the devil? Tatsumi, who was carrying out the mission with Bullet and others, muttered to himself. His body was trembling uncontrollably. Pucci, Pucci, Pucci. In less than 10 minutes the invaders were all slaughtered by the night raid. They were just ordinary soldiers, and although the members of the night raid were few in number, they could be said to be strong enough to fight against 100. Dealing with these shrimp soldiers and crab generals was naturally a piece of cake. There was not the slightest problem. After half an hour, everyone came back safe and sound. After the arrangement of Boss Najenda, Dustless, Tatsumi, Akame and Leone gathered together to discuss some necessary plans. Then they decided to sneak into the capital at night to kill Oka and the oil merchant. Chapter 1604. A bleak night, a bleak wind, a bleak imperial capital and a few bleak silhouettes. This combination was the most suitable. The decaying empire and the corrupt garbage needed them to clean up. You two go assassinate the oil merchant. As for Oka, leave it to me and Tatsumi. Dustless promised and pulled Tatsumi with a smile. It's just the captain of the guards. We will definitely solve him, right Tatsumi? Right? Right your ass. Tatsumi nodded on the surface, but he secretly slandered in his heart. After all, it was his first mission. It was normal to be nervous. After all, Tatsumi was just a newcomer. Especially he teamed up with Dustless, his enemy. This guy is more dangerous and terrible than the captain of the guards. Tatsumi was full of vigilance. If he could, he really didn't want to be with such a dangerous person like Dustless. No. At this moment, Scarlet Pupil suddenly looked determined. She looked at Dustless and Tatsumi and said in a deep voice, that Oka is too dangerous. He is the captain of the Imperial Capital's guards. It is safer for the four of us to go together. You go? How can I cheat Tatsumi if you go? Dustless complained helplessly in his heart. He was helpless to Scarlet Pupil's insistence. After all, she belonged to the captain level. Then let's go. Dustless could only compromise. Then the four of them disappeared under the night sky. It was not impossible to cheat Tatsumi in another way. Anyway, this guy was stupid. He knew that he was easy to cheat just by looking at his face. Ah. It is really the most comfortable to drink after the interrogation. On the street, a ferocious-looking man shouted. His appearance was terrible and very gloomy. His face was dark and his eyes sometimes jumped with raging light. At first glance he was not a good person. That Master Oka? At this moment, a worried and scared voice suddenly sounded behind him. Who are you? Oka was stunned and turned his head to look. It was a boy in a robe. Oh no, it was a girl. This person's appearance was extremely strange. Damn Dustless, if you fail, I'll skin you alive. Tatsumi, who was disguised as a young girl, roared fiercely in his heart. Because of Dustless's bad idea, he had to pretend to be a beautiful young girl. What made Tatsumi break down the most was that Leonai and Scarlet Pupil agreed without distinguishing right from wrong. A beautiful girl, no matter who it is, will relax their vigilance around you. Dustless explained to Tatsumi before leaving. But even so, Tatsumi, who was disguised as a young girl, was not bad and he was barely acceptable. But some people were born to belong to the strange type, such as Oka. He stared at Tatsumi for a moment, and then his face flashed with anger and killing intent. Get away from me, you damn transvestite. Ugly bastard. I, Lord Oka, have a normal sexual orientation. Do you think I can't recognize a little brat who pretends to be a beauty? Die. Oka shouted angrily. He found that his IQ was underestimated. Then he waved his fist in anger and smashed it at Tatsumi unceremoniously. All of this happened in a flash. Oka hit Tatsumi's cheek with his strength, and Tatsumi was still immersed in the 3 words that Oka insulted him. Ugly bastard. How hurtful it is to my self-esteem. Boom boom boom. Tatsumi was smashed 5 or 6 meters away. His head was bleeding and he almost fainted on the spot. Cough cough cough. This is an accident. Witnessing Tatsumi's disguise being seen through and being beaten by Oka, Dustless was stunned and quickly distanced himself from it. At the same time he said in a blaming tone, Tatsumi is too immature after all. His acting skills are too bad. If it was me, I can definitely deceive Oka to other allies to kill him. You bastard. Akame and Leone were speechless when they heard the words. You are obviously deliberately deceiving others. Oka was not an idiot. Although Tatsumi looked like a girl after disguising, Oka, who was a veteran in dealing with women, could see the clues of Tatsumi at a glance. Poor Tatsumi was deceived by Dustless. Say who sent you to approach me? Especially with such an ugly disguise, who do you think I am? Could it be that you think that I would be fooled by a few broken branches and withered willows? Can't you figure out the direction? Oka pulled out his sword and asked. The cold light reflected by the broad blade shone on Tatsumi's face. What a terrifying murderous aura. Tatsumi was full of fear. Fear flowed in his eyes. Looking at Oka who was approaching, his body retreated uncontrollably. Cold sweat fell like rain. You are too timid. You are useless. Dustless and others who were watching in the dark shook their heads. Although they were exposed because they were not prepared, Tatsumi's performance today was really unflattering. Instead of saying that he was an assassin, he looked more like a guilty conscience. I guess you are the member who specializes in assassinating dignitaries. Knight Raid? Very good, very good. I need your head to give me a promotion. Oka showed a devilish smile and immediately walked toward Tatsumi who was scared out of his wits. Retreat. Tatsumi suddenly remembered the instructions of Dustless and others in his mind. He quickly rushed to a place with few people. After all, it was still on the street. He ran to the dark alley without stopping. Oka, who followed, regarded Tatsumi as a prey in his heart. Perhaps he thought that the other members of the night raid were the same as Tatsumi, ordinary people. Chapter 1605. Touching his bloody mouth where several teeth were knocked out, Tatsumi hated Dustless in his heart. When he just left, Dustless gave him a thumbs up and praised that he was very feminine. But now, damn Dustless, I will settle this account with you when we go back. He turned his head and looked at Oka who was rushing at him crazily. His face was ferocious and he couldn't wait to tear himself into pieces. His cheeks were full of muscles and they were trembling. Tatsumi was frustrated. Damn Dustless. Thinking of Dustless who fooled him into dressing as a woman, Tatsumi was even angrier. This guy's bad idea really made him suffer. Originally, Tatsumi thought that Oka was a monster, but now it was the opposite. Tatsumi became an important shortcut for Oka to get promoted and make a fortune. Tatsumi chased Tatsumi relentlessly. He would never let him go easily. In Oka's eyes, Tatsumi was like a delicious cake. After all, as long as he caught the members of the night raid, he could successfully offer these people to the minister. In the Empire, Minister Ernest could do whatever he wanted, so he would naturally be promoted. Cough 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 cough. Seeing that Oka was chasing Tatsumi, Dustless had to come out and make his presence known. He said seriously, my plan succeeded. In fact, my original intention was to let Oka see through Tatsumi's disguise deliberately. Pucci. Scarlet Eye and Leonette, who were on the way, both vomited blood. They secretly scolded Dustless for being shameless. Just now, before the plan was implemented, Dustless didn't say so. If I remember correctly, your original intention was to let Tatsumi dress up as a girl to seduce Oka, right? Leonette stared at Dustless speechlessly with an expression of, you underestimate my IQ. No. Dustless quickly shook his finger and said in a deep voice, this is just what I meant on the surface. Actually, my real intention is to deliberately expose Taz's disguise so that Oka will be suspicious of him. Although Oka looked very rough on the surface, he was a man who was rough in his heart. Realizing that something was wrong, he would definitely not let Tatsumi go easily. And Tatsumi's performance was also within my expectations. It's his first mission and he's really scared. Really? Chi Tong looked doubtfully at Dustless's thoughtful face. Soon after, his gaze locked onto Oka who was chasing after Dustless. He immediately praised, Shinjun, you are so smart. Cough cough cough. Dustless's face turned slightly red. Was that really the case? In fact, this was indeed the case. Dustless intended to use Oka's hand to kill Tatsumi, but this kid's protagonist aura was not a joke. His own strength was not bad and he was slightly better than Oka, so he temporarily escaped the disaster. It's almost done. Tatsumi quickly ran to the previously agreed alley. It was dark and silent. There was no one around. There was only Tatsumi who was desperately escaping and Oka who was crazy. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At this moment, Tatsumi's footsteps suddenly stopped. He turned his head and stared at Oka with a gloomy face. Moreover, his cold sword was unsheathed. You broke 7 or 8 of my teeth and I will pay you back double. At this moment, Tatsumi, who was furious, finally looked like an assassin. He was eager to take revenge and the tingling in his mouth made him feel ashamed. He couldn't forgive this guy. For a moment, his fear was forgotten. Yo, good eyesight. Oka glanced at Tatsumi with slight appreciation, and then his eyes emitted a fierce light. Unfortunately, your opponent is Master Oka. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As his voice faded, Oka's broad blade swept out like a wave, directly attacking Tatsumi's neck, intending to kill him in one strike. Killing the night raid could be promoted. Under such a huge temptation, Oka broke out in unimaginable power. Whoosh 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 whoosh. However, Tatsumi was not a vegetarian. He also practiced swordsmanship for several years. He also swung his sword. Boom boom boom. The two blades collided and suddenly there was a dull explosion. In the dark void there was a dazzling flame. That was the light that only belonged to the friction between the two people's swords. In terms of strength, today's Tatsumi was obviously not as strong as Oka, who was stronger than a cow. However, he also had an advantage that Oka couldn't make up for. You lost. Aiming at Oka, whose weaknesses were exposed, Tatsumi's sword was instantly endowed with divinity. It was incredible and difficult to resist at the same time. Puchi. Suddenly, a shocking crack appeared on Oka's abdomen. In terms of strength, I am not as good as you, but in terms of swordsmanship, if you want to catch up with me, you still need a few years. Tatsumi glanced at the corpse behind him coldly and smiled. Suddenly, he felt that today was the happiest and the most wonderful day in his life. At this time, Tatsumi's face was full of excitement. He suddenly realized that there was a raging gaze staring at him, and there was a cold light. He immediately picked up the big sword and put it on his head without hesitation. Boom boom boom. A heavy blow like Mount Tai suddenly came, and a thick blade came horizontally, and all the force hit Tatsumi's blade. He was hit by this violent force and the ground under his feet cracked. Go to hell, little brat. Oka shouted loudly. The big sword in his hand was infinitely close to Tatsumi's head. The blade that Tatsumi used to resist had been suppressed by Oka. Puchi. A dazzling light fell from the sky, and the sharp edge cut through Oka's body and divided him into two. Too embarrassing, Tatsumi? Dustless's gloating voice suddenly sounded, and his eyes were full of ridicule. At this moment, Tatsumi was extremely embarrassed. Just now he was punched by Oka and his face was red. Chapter 1606. Oka turned his head with difficulty and saw Wu Chen's frosty face. That disdainful look was obviously like looking at an ant struggling on the verge of death. You are lucky. Glancing at Tatsumi, who was still in shock, he had no choice but to save this kid. If Dustless didn't do it, Akame and Leone would kill Oka. Since Tatsumi would be saved no matter what the result was, Dustless might as well take the initiative to attack, and he could also get a super good reputation of saving companions. It's all your fault. Tatsumi, who was rescued, found that Dustless appeared, and immediately jumped up like a furious lion. He pointed at him and scolded, "It's all your bad idea to let me dress up as a man. This is because your acting skills are not good enough. You can't even dress up as a woman, let alone be an assassin." Dustless shrugged with an expression of, "You are too weak." What's more, his plain face suddenly became extremely cold. Dustless exuded a chill and said coldly, "You are so rude to your savior, pay attention to your attitude. This guy is so strong." Tatsumi's face immediately changed, and his face was full of fear. If Oka, who was just killed, was a dangerous species, then Dustless was a super dangerous species that was dozens of times stronger than the dangerous species. "Tatsumi, how do you feel?" Akame and Leone asked. "You should be careful in the future. Although your strength is stronger than Oka, it is still impossible to kill him in seconds. If you are as ruthless as Dustless, it is best to split him into pieces." "I understand." Tatsumi nodded and looked at Oka, who was split into two. His intestines were clearly visible and the smell of blood was pungent. His face was pale and he resisted the tumbling of his internal organs. If he vomited, it would be too shameful. "Retreat, it is estimated that many people have noticed," Dustless suggested after looking around with his bright eyes. He had already heard the sound of hurried footsteps. "You and Tatsumi go back to the base for the time being. As for the oil merchant who colluded with Oka, Leona and I will deal with him." "Scarlet," I said to Dustless. Swish, swish. It was also at this moment that a flash of light appeared in the darkness. Dodge. Although Leone and Akame did not understand what it was, they realized the danger and retreated. At the same time, they did not forget to remind Dustless and Tatsumi. Bang bang bang. Dustless took the opportunity and kicked Tazimi. Boom boom boom. Tatsumi heavily hit the wall, his internal organs trembled fiercely. Tatsumi couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Dustless used too much strength, even the wall behind him was dented. Bastard, why did you suddenly kick me? Tatsumi roared furiously. He was sure that if he hadn't trained, Dustless's kick would have crippled him. Shut up, if it weren't for Dustless, you would have been beaten into a hornet's nest. Scarlet Eye pointed to the place where Tatsumi stood before. It had been pierced and crushed by countless ice dregs, and there were small holes everywhere like a honeycomb. But I am unlucky. Tatsumi snorted and was speechless. He was sure that this was Dustless's deliberate revenge. In fact, when he heard Scarlet Eye and Leona's reminder, Tatsumi was ready to escape. Who knew that right at this time, Dustless kicked him flying with a bang. Even without the help of Dustless, Tatsumi could deal with it. However, Dustless saved him. Tatsumi knew that Dustless was using his position to avenge a private grudge, but he couldn't say anything. This guy is as cunning as a fox. I should stay away from him in the future. Thinking of his miserable deeds in the past few days, Tatsumi decided to avoid Dustless. If he couldn't beat him, he could hide. The ability to use ice. Glancing down at the ice dregs all over the ground, Dustless's pupils shrank slightly. It seems that she came back early. Is this female hungry wolf so thirsty to trouble me? Could it be? Leona and Scarlet Eye were also tense. Both of them heard that the Empire's strongest sadist general would return early, and the ability to control ice seemed to be the only one. Several people's eyes swept into the depths of the darkness at the same time. A young girl in a white uniform with long blue hair came into view. Is death really came early? Scarlet Eye frowned slightly. Realizing that she was in trouble, her right hand had already grasped the hilt. It's hard to imagine that a person like you would refuse my invitation and join an assassination organization. Night Raid. Are they so capable of making you admire them? Death showed a cold face. Her eyes stopped from Scarlet Eye and Leona for a few seconds. Finally, she glanced at Tatsumi and finally fixed her eyes on Dustless. Damn it, I am despised again. Tatsumi's mouth twitched a few times, and he found that it was his turn to be unlucky. Do you know his death? Scarlet Eye and Leona both showed surprised expressions. This sadist general was famous all over the world. Even because of Isthetha's expedition to the alien race, their night raid dared to disturb the imperial capital unscrupulously. She is an enemy. Dustless scratched his head and explained, I defeated her last time. I'm afraid this woman heard that I appeared in the imperial capital, so she killed the alien race in advance to trouble me. Sorry, I got you into trouble? Defeated Isthetha? Scarlet Eye and Leona both felt that their brains were not enough to understand the words. They stared at Dustless with their eyes wide open. This was one of the strongest sadist general in the Empire. It could be called the existence of 1 against 10,000. Chapter 1607. Is this guy so famous? Isn't he a novice like me? How can the Empire's strongest sadist general Isthetha know Dustless? Tatsumi's eyes were full of astonishment. He didn't expect Dustless to be familiar with Isthetha, and he heard from Dustless that Isthetha was looking for trouble with him this time. The reason was that Dustless once defeated Isthetha. You defeated the strongest sadist general Dash? Scarlet Eye, Leone, and even Tatsumi had the expression of seeing ghosts. Their eyes were full of emptiness and they were shocked by these words. It's all your fault. What did you do to offend this sadist General Dash? Tatsumi's tone suddenly changed. He was so depressed that he vomited blood and scolded, we all have to face the revenge of the sadist general. I heard from Brother Bullet that Isthetha is a living pervert. You said I'm a pervert? Isthetha stared at Tatsumi with raging eyes and said coldly, reckless kid, you'd better pray that you don't fall into my hands one day, otherwise I will personally let you know what it's like to beg for death. Isthetha's words were quite powerful. Tatsumi immediately shrank his neck and dared not to continue to talk nonsense. Isthetha's aura was too strong. Let alone Tatsumi, even Leone and Scarlet Eye could feel the sense of horror. This woman seemed to be able to kill others with a thought. You all go back, staying here will only drag me down. Dustless waved his hand and stood resolutely in front of Isthetha. Obviously he wanted to fight with her. Then you be careful, we will retreat temporarily. Without waiting for Scarlet Eye and Leone to speak, Tatsumi spoke in advance, looking at Isthetha with fear in his eyes. He was the weakest among the 4 people. If he was caught, Tatsumi only felt a chill on his back. It's terrible. Thinking of Isthetha's previous declaration, Tatsumi had goosebumps. If he was caught by Isdeth, he would definitely be tortured by this guy. You want to leave? Isdeth snorted and said coolly, there is no doubt that it is difficult for me to deal with this guy, but as for you ordinary people, you still want to leave? Isdeth's right hand suddenly fell to the ground. After a crisp snap, the surrounding environment suddenly changed. Ka. The dark world was completely covered in a thick layer of ice. The entire alley was isolated from the outside world. The oxygen consumption accelerated, and the danger of suffocation filled the air at any time. It had become an independent small world. Break. Leona gathered her strength and punched the ice wall, but nothing happened. Only a fist mark was left behind. There wasn't even a crack. Clang 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 clang. Scarlet Eye also raised his saber and slashed at the ice wall, but the effect was minimal. Just like Leona, he only left a faint cut mark on the thick layer of ice. As for Tatsumi, whose battle power was only 5, needless to say, it was impossible to count on him. Really? Sure enough, teammates are a hindrance. Dustless sighed helplessly, and then looked at the frozen world. The blazing chakra came out of his mouth, and the boundless sea of fire swept away. Fire release, grand fire annihilation. The dark night sky suddenly turned crimson like blood. A lot of boiling steam came out of the frozen world. Facing this boundless super sea of fire, the ice immediately showed its other side, rapid melting. Amazing. Scarlet Eye and Leona admired him. The sea of fire just came for a moment, the ice wall that was a few meters thick was evaporated, and a big hole of tens of meters appeared. Sure enough. Other people are small characters, only Dustless is the problem. If we don't solve this guy, everything will be in vain. Isdeth frowned deeply and immediately relaxed. At this point, Isdeth also saw through it quite clearly. Others were small characters and a little mouse was always a little mouse. As long as they solved their Mouse King, Dustless, all the problems would be solved. You guys retreat, this guy's target is me. Dustless said to Scarlet Eye and others, his voice was very calm. But, Scarlet Eye opened her mouth to refute, but before her voice fell, she was stopped by Dustless. We should be companions, you have to believe me. In this case, Silver could only say his trump card, companions. I believe you. Scarlet Eye nodded like a chicken, and her view of Dustless also changed instantly. For some people, the meaning of this word was very heavy. For some people, the word companion was also as light as a feather. But it happened that Scarlet Eye was a person who had absolute trust in her companions. The simple word companion meant a lot to her. After nodding, she resolutely withdrew. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. However, not long after they escaped from the frozen alley, a few figures suddenly appeared. Wanna run? No way. Isdeth's subordinates, the 3 beasts, all locked on Akainu, Leona, and Tatsumi with hatred on their faces. In the past few days I have strengthened my training and become stronger. This time I must catch Dustless and tear him into pieces. Neo, one of the 3 beasts, said with hatred. Leva and Didos looked at each other, and their speechless eyes were extremely tangled. They complained in their hearts, you didn't even touch his body last time and this time you want to crush him? Don't dream. That's a god, he can even defeat Isdeth Sama. Chapter 1608. On the other hand, they were also in a stalemate. You are really haunting me, why are you so obsessed with me? His eyes stared helplessly at Isdeth, who was full of fighting intent. Dustless's expression was slightly stiff. He knew that the result was like a moth flying into the flame, and the end of self-destruction, but he still rushed to her without hesitation. What kind of behavior was this? Typical death-seeking. Who knows? Isdeth answered perfunctorily. In an instant, a big ice sword appeared in her hand. She stared at Dustless like a torch, then she turned into a flash and rushed to Dustless. Whoosh 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 whoosh. The light that cut through the night sky was very dazzling, like the morning star in the dark. It went straight to Dustless's cheek. Didn't I say that I am your natural enemy? Dustless had a headache, he suddenly felt that Isdeth was also a persevering problem child. Kakaka. Dustless did not block, the ice edge was unstoppable, it cut to Dustless's head. However, there was no scene that Isdeth expected, but the ice sword with high hardness collapsed instantly. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Seeing such a strange situation happening, Isdeth quickly opened a distance with Dustless. She was particularly depressed and even speechless. The result was a big blow to her. What kind of taigu does this guy use? He has so many abilities. Isdeth slandered in her mind, but her arms were attached to the ground. Kakaka. In an instant, the earth was once again eroded by thick ice. Countless sharp thorns rose from the ground and stabbed to Dustless's eyes. Perhaps this death thought that human eyes were the weakest place. No one was an exception. Shinra Tensei. The invisible repulsive force broke out. The attacking ice light turned into nothing in an instant. It turned into crystal fragments in the sky. Like snow, it was blown away by the wind and drifted to the distance. Now you are not my opponent. Glancing at his death faintly, Dustless said calmly with no expression. That is not necessarily true. Isthetha's face was only filled with excitement. She suddenly felt that her boring life was much more interesting. Her eyes circled around Dustless with a trace of madness. I have one more goal in my life, to tame you and keep you as my pet. The water-blue eyes were full of firmness. Isteth waved her hand lightly and dense ice barbs were launched. What a crazy idea. Frowning and looking at Isteth, Dustless said indifferently, but, such an unrealistic idea will only make your invincible record more failures. Buzz buzz buzz. Under the dark night sky, Dustless's body suddenly emitted a huge radiance, like the sun hanging high in the sky. Swish, swish. The tip of the sword pierced through the night sky and pierced through Dustless's body. But it was worth mentioning that his calm face showed no signs of pain. He kept calm all the time. The overwhelming attack seemed to have not touched Dustless. He was safe and sound, quietly looking at his death. I am a flash person who has eaten the flash fruit. My body can be elementalized at will. All physics is a challenge for me. There is no plasticity. Calmly lifting his golden foot, a ray of light covered it. Dustless whispered, Speed is power, Isteth. Have you ever been kicked by the speed of light? Buzz buzz buzz. The flash of the little foot was getting brighter and brighter and the tip of the sword was frightening. The cold sweat on the forehead was uncontrollably falling. Even with Isthetha's stereotype, she was tense at the moment, as if she was facing a formidable enemy. Sorry, I was kicked by your speed of light last time. Even if there was a gap in strength, Isteth did not show weakness and choked Dustless. You woman. Dustless was quite entangled when he heard the words. Thinking of Isthetha's character, he was afraid that she would not beg for mercy even if she died. Boom 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 boom. He was too lazy to talk nonsense. Dustless kicked out a huge light. Whoosh 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 whoosh. The huge flash galloped. The speed of light was too fast, and the sword was pointed at Isthetha's face. Being hit by this kick, with the hardness of the human body in this world, he would be either dead or injured. Although Isteth had also been kicked by the speed of light last time, that was when Dustless did not use his full strength. It's useless to me. Isteth smiled calmly, and immediately her eyes solidified. Her thin lips spat out such a few words. Mokpotamo. When the voice fell, the world in the eyes of Isteth froze in an instant. Everything stopped. The flow of time and time, including the light, all stopped. I won this time. Isteth smiled and walked to Dustless. She took out the collar that had been prepared for a long time and put it on Dustless. Isteth had a sense of accomplishment for taming a person who was stronger than herself. After a while, the frozen space was all removed. Dustless was shocked to find that he had put on a collar. Surprised, right? Isteth put her hands on her hips and pointed to Dustless's face and said, The final winner is me, and you will be mine in the future. However, Dustless just glanced at her calmly. Miss Isteth, you are so young, your eyes have become blurry, please look more clearly. Dustless stared at Isteth with a strange look. Well? Isteth heard the words and frowned slightly. She stared at Dustless's neck subconsciously, but she found that the conspicuous collar had disappeared. At the same time, Isteth felt that her neck was heavy. She instinctively reached out and touched it, but she found that it was the collar she used on Dustless's head. Chapter 1609. Damn it. How did this damn bastard do it? Isteth cursed angrily. Although she had the hobby of putting collars on others, she was the sadist general, but this did not mean that she also had the hobby of being trained by others. Isthetha's sadist character was only one-sided. In short, she liked to train others, liked to be strong, liked to trample on everyone's body and heart, but there was a crucial factor that could not be ignored. Isteth didn't like to be trained and trampled on by others. Hey. Dustless showed a playful smile, pulled the chain on the collar, and laughed with a very teasing tone. Hurry up and call me Master Dustless with a flattering tone. At the same time, Dustless also pulled the chain of the collar, and Isthetha's body suddenly shook. Go to hell. Isteth, who was angry out of shame, gnashed her teeth, and her body burst out a more violent cold air, and a super big sword appeared in her hand. And she unceremoniously stabbed Dustless's face. This face was too cheap, her lungs were full of fire, and if she looked at it a few more times she would be angry and have internal injuries. It's useless. Dustless glanced at the attack with disdain, his pupils widened, a ripple appeared in the void, and suddenly the attacking ice sword was annihilated. God's power. There was a crack in the space in front of Dustless, a small black hole was clearly visible, and directly swallowed the fatal attack, and then it disappeared completely like a stone sinking into the sea. Any of your attacks are useless to me, give up. Grasping Dustless's chin, Dustless joked, hurry up and call me Master Dustless. You're dreaming. Isteth clenched her teeth, her delicate face was green, and she wanted to cut Dustless into pieces. She could only vent her hatred by stabbing his bones and scattering his ashes. This evil guest, how on earth did you do it? Looking at the collar on her neck, Isteth clenched her fists and forcibly suppressed the anger in her heart. Her heart was full of confusion. She was sure to put the collar on Dustless, but she didn't expect it to be on her neck. Isteth was depressed when she thought about it. Don't tell me it's your illusion again? Thinking of the sad experience of meeting Dustless for the first time, Isteth subconsciously looked at Silver's eyes, and her eyes were full of confusion and puzzlement. You didn't use those strange eyes. Isteth was even more confused, looking at Dustless's eyes with the desire for knowledge. Do you want to know how I do it? Dustless, he grabbed Isteth's chin and said seriously, come, call me Master Dustless and I will fulfill your wish. Don't be delusional, I will definitely defeat you. Says Dethus, this guy was too annoying. Really? Dustless heard the words and smiled contemptuously, you don't even know how you were tricked and you still want to beat me? Don't you think your idea is ridiculous? Isteth was speechless, she lowered her head unwillingly and her clenched fists loosened. She didn't even know the enemy's tricks. Could she change the result the next time she met him? Obviously it was impossible. If she met Dustless again she was afraid that the result would be the same. Am I going to be suppressed by this guy for a lifetime? Isteth was angry. She was a competitive person. She could bear being suppressed by Dustless once or twice, and maybe she could get revenge in the future, but she would never be suppressed for a lifetime. Dustless, Master Dustless. Isteth, who was forced, could only call out these 4 words, but she hated him in her heart. She swore that she would let Dustless try all the criminal laws hundreds of times in the future. In fact, it's also genjutsu. After Dustless heard the words, he kept his promise and told the truth. Impossible, you can only release genjutsu with those strange eyes. Isteth questioned for the first time and stared at Dustless with annoyance. She couldn't wait to bite Dustless to death. He called Master Dustless, but casually made up an answer to fool her. How dare he? This is a fact. Did I tell you that you can only use genjutsu with Sharingan? Dustless asked and then said lightly, Isteth, you are too immature after all. When fighting, don't use your eyes to see, but use your heart to feel the changes in the environment. Things like eyes are sometimes unreliable. It makes sense. Isteth nodded and immediately stared at Dustless in surprise. She was puzzled. You exposed your advantages, aren't you afraid that I will turn the tables? Turn the tables? It seemed that he heard the funniest joke. Dustless grinned. Will sharks be afraid of small sardines? Will eagles that fly high be afraid of the blue sky? Will a strong giant be afraid of a weak baby? Isteth wanted to argue, but she was speechless. She lost everything in the 2 battles. Not to mention making Dustless bleed, she couldn't even touch Dustless's body. This is a good opportunity. Looking at Dustless, who had a lazy expression, Isteth's eyes flashed with ferocity. She opened her mouth to bite Dustless's face. All this happened too fast and too suddenly, Dustless didn't notice it. After all, Isteth was still wearing a collar around her neck, so Dustless suffered a loss. Although Dustless retreated at the first time, Isteth, who desperately wanted to make Dustless suffer a loss, broke out the limit of speed and suddenly caught Dustless's body. And she opened her mouth and bit Dustless's lower lip. Chapter 16:10. Dustless was dumbfounded, and there were ripples in his heart. He didn't expect Isteth to be so crazy. This ferocious look was like she wanted to die together with him. What the F***ck? After a while, Dustless's throat burst out such a sentence. It was enough to see his depression. Would a normal woman desperately want to bite a person to death? Of course not, especially biting the sensitive place like the mouth. But Dustless found that he was wrong. His opponent was a problem girl, Isteth. Especially now, Dustless's behavior completely trampled on the dignity of Isteth. In order to get revenge on himself, she had thrown away everything. Woo! There was also a choking sound in Isteth's mouth because her gums were biting Dustless's lower lip. Her words were vague and he couldn't hear what Isteth wanted to express. However, seeing her proud smile, Dustless also vaguely guessed what it meant. Aren't you arrogant? Aren't you proud? I'll make you bleed now. Although Dustless couldn't hear what Isteth wanted to say from the corner of her mouth, it was roughly like this. I'm a little bit impressed by you. Staring calmly at Isteth, who was close at hand, Dustless praised. This kind of mentality is worthy of praise. You are indeed the strongest sadist general of the Empire. Because Isteth was biting his lower lip, Dustless could even feel the heat in Isteth's mouth. Woo! Isteth continued to choke with a smile, and at the same time she increased the strength of her bite. Her teeth sank deep into Dustless's lips. She looked at Dustless expectantly, trying to find a painful expression, but Isteth was destined to be disappointed. After so many years, Dustless had already lost the feeling of pain, and there was no reaction at all. You are a little bit arrogant. After a while, Dustless's mouth came out with such a cold sentence, and then he whispered, I'll teach you a lesson so you won't be so self-righteous. Armament hockey hardening. The moment he said that, Dustless's mouth became as hard as steel. But Isteth was instantly miserable. What was the feeling of biting the steel with all her strength? At this moment, Isteth finally had a very comfortable experience. Damn it, it hurts. Isteth grimaced in pain and stomped her feet angrily. She quickly let go of Dustless's lower lip. She wanted to cry but had no tears. This was a typical case of shooting herself in the foot. Looking at the proud face of Dustless, Isteth was depressed. Her lungs were overturned and she almost vomited blood. Dustless was fine, but Isteth's gums had traces of blood. It's almost time to retreat. See you later, Miss Isteth. After taking a playful glance at Isteth, Dustless politely waved his hand, and immediately his body faded rapidly, gradually losing its texture until it finally completely merged into the night sky. Isteth didn't even have time to react, and she watched Dustless disappear into the sky. Dustless? Next time we won't meet in the end if we meet. I want you to understand how cruel my criminal law is. Isteth stayed for a few seconds, and then left after muttering to herself for a while. The base of the night raid. Although it was close to midnight, most of the members of the night raid couldn't sleep. They just killed Oka and a merchant who sold grain and oil. Akame and others took more time than expected. Boss Najenda and others were inevitably worried. Although everyone knew the rules of the killer, after getting along for a long time, it was inevitable that there would be feelings between them. Akame and others couldn't return at night, and all the members were quite worried. There shouldn't be a problem. Bullet said with a little nervousness. With Akame's ability, there will be no problem. She is just a captain of the guards. Gil said softly, but her expression was tight. Obviously she was comforting herself. It's a pity that there is Tatsumi. Mine said what everyone was worried about. Akame had no problem, so did Leona. Dustless naturally had nothing to say. Although he was also a newcomer, his decisiveness in killing was more experienced than them. However, there was a fatal problem that couldn't be ignored. Tatsumi, the others were performing the task, but only this guy was dragging them down. Creak. At this moment, suddenly there was a violent sound of knocking on the door. Boss Najenda, as well as mine and others, were stunned, and then they all looked forward to the source. The figures reflected in the pupils were Akame and others. Oh, it seems that it's okay. After exhaling, Najenda's hanging heart was relieved. If Akame and others could come back, it meant that the task was completed. At the moment she showed a happy smile. However, this smile was only for a moment. After taking a closer look at several people, her face became stiff instantly. Mine and others also had the same look. Looking around, they also found that one person was missing. Dustless. Boss, when we assassinated Oka, we suddenly encountered his death. Dustless stayed alone. As for the result, we don't know specifically. Akame said the reason with disappointment. Her expression was dim and her face was pale and weak. Others were sad when they heard this. Isteth was the strongest sadist general of the Empire. In their eyes, Dustless was dead. Chapter 1611. Everyone in the night raid bowed their heads when they heard the words. Although it was normal for assassins to leave, sometimes, it was inevitable for everyone to be sad. Just like the current scene, although the time they spent with Dustless was very short and rushed, everyone could not help but feel sad for a while. That guy is very popular. Tatsumi looked around. He didn't feel much. First, he only knew Dustless for a few days. Second, he had a long history of grievances with Dustless, especially Dustless often deliberately retaliated against Tatsumi. The relationship between the two was extremely bad. Did you encounter his death? Boss Najenda spat out an eye circle, was silent for a few seconds and immediately said, I know his death is means, Dustless may not be able to save his life. That woman? All the members of the night raid were silent. All of them together may not be the opponent of his death. His death was also one of the most feared figures in the night raid. Oh. After 3 minutes of silence, we will talk about other questions. Before Najenda's voice fell, it was disrupted by a very discordant voice. Silence? Who do you mourn for? Could it be that Tatsumi is dead? Then God really opened his eyes this time. The serious atmosphere was destroyed by this funny voice. Everyone was stunned and immediately rushed to the source. Dustless, who was full of expectations, suddenly appeared in front of them. It's a pity that Tatsumi is not dead. Looking at Tatsumi, who was injured but full of spirit, Dustless's face flashed a deep sadness. Hey, do you know how to talk? You are dead. Tatsumi stared at Dustless unkindly. This guy can't speak at all. Dustless. Leonine and Akame smiled happily, and their desperate faces were excited. The two attacked from the front and back, and Dustless was tightly surrounded. Cough, cough, cough. Who are you mourning? Seeing everyone's resurrected face, Dustless was extremely speechless. Should it be me? His death is the strongest sadist general of the Empire. Those who are targeted by her are all fleeing. I even prepared your funeral. Looking straight at Dustless, Najenda said bluntly. It's a pity this time that guy didn't kill me. And my luck is pretty good, I have escaped from his death twice. Glancing at Najenda, Dustless rolled his eyes. No injury? Bullet asked, staring at Dustless as if he saw a monster. It was a miracle for ordinary people to escape from his death, but Dustless was intact. Let me see. Others just looked left and right, but Akame took off Dustless's clothes in a very strange way. If he didn't react quickly, maybe his shorts would be taken off by this guy. I expected his death to come back early, but why did she come back without stopping? Najenda was puzzled and said to herself. It took several days to return to the capital, but his death came back in less than half a day. She scratched her head and couldn't understand why his death was so anxious. Cough, cough, cough. Maybe it's because of me. When I didn't join the night raid, that guy suffered some losses in my hands. Maybe she is anxious to retaliate against me. Dustless shrugged helplessly. His death belonged to the best example of a person who went for wool and came back shorn. But, Najenda nodded slightly and immediately nodded. Dustless and Tatsumi's level of being assassins still needs to be improved. You two learned from Akame yesterday and you will follow mine tomorrow. Mine. Dustless and Tatsumi both frowned and looked at the pink-haired girl with double ponytails at the same time. This is the boss's decision. Do you two have any dissatisfaction? Mine raised her head proudly and put her hands on her waist. Of course. Tatsumi was more anxious than Dustless and complained loudly, I seriously protest against this guy. Mine is the kind of person who uses public office to avenge private grudges. As in the original work, Tatsumi, who just joined the night raid, did not get along well with Mine. They often ridiculed each other and the two sides were even full of gunpowder. Idiot. Glancing at Tatsumi faintly, Dustless decisively chose to be silent. He knew that after a while Tatsumi would be unlucky. Leone. Najenda glanced at Leone and then pointed to Tatsumi. I see. Leone nodded, she clenched her fists and suddenly there was a crackling sound. She immediately rushed to Tatsumi without hesitation. Bang bang bang. Two ruthless punches fell. Tatsumi's head suddenly had a bunch of red bumps. Haven't you figured it out yet? If it weren't for Dustless, you would have been killed this time. Learn from Mine. Najenda ordered seriously. Although Mine was unreliable, she also defeated Tatsumi, who was a newcomer. As for involving Dustless, it was to deliberately attack Tatsumi, hoping that this guy would be brave after knowing the shame. Although Najenda was well-intentioned, Tatsumi did not have such a long-term vision. He was full of malice to Mine. There was no way. Dustless invaded the world. Although he changed a lot of things, some things still could not be changed. For example, the relationship between Mine and Tatsumi was not harmonious as in the original work, and it was even worse now. I have serious doubts about the ability of this guy. Glancing at Tatsumi, Mine swung her ponytail and snorted, I know it by looking at his face. You look like a loser. Tatsumi stared at Mine with fire. He rolled up his sleeves. If it were not because of many people, he really wanted to fight with Mine. As for you, her sight fell on Dustless. Mine's strange sight made Dustless's face change slightly. He always felt that this weird girl was deliberately attacking him. Chapter 16:12. I should not be as bad as Tatsumi. Pointing to Tatsumi, Dustless asked directly regardless of Tatsumi's bitter face. You are indeed much better than him, and you are more trustworthy. Mine just nodded slightly when she heard the words, and she didn't care about Tatsumi's green face. Poor Tatsumi. A group of Night Raid members heard the words and stared at Tatsumi with pity. It was not that he couldn't do it or he was too bad. On the contrary, Tatsumi was very hard-working and enterprising. This was also the reason why Bullet valued him. But his competitor, Dustless, was too heaven-defying. In the final analysis, it was not that Tatsumi's ability was bad, but he was unlucky to meet such a powerful opponent like Dustless. Compared with the two, Tatsumi was trash and the name of Dustless was confirmed. Let's call it a day. It was almost midnight. The boss Najenda waved her hand indicating that everyone could disperse and rest. As an assassin they must have enough energy. In the early morning of the next day the sun rose from the east, and the sunshine was thousands of miles away. Several figures gathered in the conference room that usually had meetings. Now the sun is shining on the but Mine is still sleeping? This boss is too unqualified, she will definitely lead me and Dustless to the ditch. Tatsumi looked at the scorching sun in the distance, full of complaints. On the other hand, Wuxia was reading books lazily. Unknowingly he had developed the habit of reading books. When he was bored in every world he would read books. It was necessary to supplement his knowledge. Dustless, greeting the boss is also the work of the subordinates. This task is given to you. Hurry up, we still have a major task to perform today. Najenda looked at Dustless, meaning to let him call Mine. It's finally fair for once. Tatsumi breathed a sigh of relief. He and Mine didn't deal with each other. Dustless was the best scapegoat. No problem. Dustless heard the words and nodded. He turned and left the conference room and walked to Mine's room. The new entrusted task is coming. The target to eliminate this time is the distant relative of Minister Ernest, Iyokul. This guy uses his identity to bully people and do all kinds of evil things. He has done countless bad things. Since no one can punish him, then I will attack Heaven's punishment at night and eliminate him. As soon as Dustless left, the boss said today's task. Because the target was a distant relative of Ernest, and there was the protection of the masters of Huangquan Temple, in view of the danger of this task, and now that his death suddenly returned to the capital, Najenda decided to attack at night. At the same time, Wuxia also walked to Mine's room. Dong dong. After knocking on the door twice, Wuxia saw that no one responded, so he gently pushed the door. Creak. The door was gently pushed open. The scene in front of him made Dustless lost his mind for a few seconds. He saw that Mine was preparing to wear clothes. At this moment she only wore a pink bra and pink briefs. Her white skin was all exposed in front of Dustless's eyes. Both of them were a little dull and they looked at each other stupidly for a while. Mine's room was in a mess, the clothes were scattered all over the floor. A lot of underwear all appeared in front of Dustless's eyes. The scene was suddenly very embarrassing. Boy, choose a way to die that you like. Mine's face turned red instantly, her romantic taigu, pumpkin, the front of the muzzle had condensed a lot of flashes. She aimed at Dustless's head mercilessly. The light was about to destroy Dustless's body. This has nothing to do with me. Dustless's eyes were indifferent, he said calmly. First of all, I knocked on the door, the person who did not respond is you. It is reasonable for me to break in. Secondly, the boss ordered me to come to meet the boss, so you have to be prepared in advance. Also, the boss said that there is an important task to get rich, the time is tight, I can't wait for you. You are very good at talking. Mine opened her mouth and found that she had nothing to say. Dustless's words were reasonable, she did not respond when he knocked on the door, and Najenda also mentioned this to her. But, your reaction is too strange, you look down on me, you seriously hurt my dignity. Mine's cheeks were full of indignation, the extinguished taigu pumpkin shone again. She blushed as if she had been wronged. Dustless was confused, he did not know what was wrong with this girl, he did not seem to provoke her. Is this girl's head rusty? Dustless looked at the flash that locked him, his cheeks suddenly darkened. He asked angrily, "What do you mean now? Tell me clearly. You don't have any reaction when you see my body, you are looking down on me, mocking me that I don't have the charm of a woman." After a while, Mine said a very ridiculous answer. No wonder the relationship between Tatsumi and Mine is so bad. This girl's head is really broken. Hearing this strange reason, Dustless could not help but be dumbfounded. He raised his middle finger to Mine's strange idea. Dustless broke into the room without knowing it. Mine's aggrieved appearance of crying was still vivid in Dustless' mind. He wanted to dig his eyes out. Now she said that Dustless had no reaction to her body, this was looking down on her, it was simply unreasonable. This time I am unlucky, I didn't look at the almanac when I went out. There is still an assassination task today, goodbye. Dustless cursed his bad luck secretly, he decisively turned and left. He finally could understand Tatsumi's pain. For Mine, this kind of thinking, he said that he was unable to deal with it. 1 second she accused him of peeping at her body, and the next second she accused him of having no lust and having no reaction to her body. Was there such a person in the world? If I didn't guess wrong, the assassination target of this mission seems to be the distant relative of Minister Ernest. In the quiet corridor, Dustless muttered, and behind him was the arrogant girl who angrily chased after him, Mine. Chapter 16:13. Mine ran over angrily. She did not expect Dustless to be so arrogant. He should know that she was his boss today. Now this guy did not even respect his boss. Unforgivable. Stop right there. Mine grabbed Dustless's hands and immediately blocked in front of him. She shouted arrogantly, "I am your boss today. Pay attention to your attitude." Attitude? What attitude? Dustless ignored her, and then his face showed ridicule. He ridiculed, "If you continue to take off your clothes, I must run far away so as not to get involved." You. Mine stamped her feet when she heard the words. Looking at Dustless's particularly annoying face, she couldn't help but be angry. She had to use her trump card. You are not qualified. You are definitely not qualified to be an assassin. Continue to be a cook with Akame. That's not up to you. The boss says so, I have no opinion. Shrugging, Dustless passed over Mine's shoulder and went straight to the direction of the conference room. You better not fall into my hands. Glaring at Dustless fiercely, Mine, who had nowhere to vent her anger, blushed and was extremely uncomfortable. Where is Tatsumi? You two novices are outrageous. One ignored my authority, and the other simply did not come to greet me. Do you still need to say it? That's because Tatsumi looks down on you. Dustless suddenly added fuel to the fire and smiled maliciously. If Mine was willing to beat Tatsumi, it would be a good deal. I will let that guy go for the time being. Mine was not fooled, but followed Dustless's footsteps to the conference room. Are you two finally here? As soon as he came in, Tatsumi's strange voice sounded. He tried to capture the depression from Dustless's face. After all, Mine was notoriously difficult to serve. Unexpectedly, Dustless seemed to be fine, but Mine was furious. Mine seemed to notice Tatsumi's sight. Mine just glared at him, and Tatsumi suddenly shrank his neck. Is this guy angry? I didn't offend her. Tatsumi was secretly depressed. He had a feeling of being shot even when he was lying down. He looked at Dustless gloomily. Dustless was definitely the one who set him up. Everyone move out for the night raid. Our target this time is Iyoko. I repeat, that guy is a distant relative of Minister Ernest. He is protected by the masters of the Huangquan Temple. Everyone be careful. Boss Najenda finally ordered, and then all the members of the night raid nodded and disappeared. Swish, swish. In the dark room, several black shadows were running around. Everyone's skills were extremely vigorous. Even Tatsumi, a rookie, was improving rapidly. He was trained quite well by Bullet. The members of the night raid barely recognized Tatsumi's existence. The hazy moonlight hung high in the sky, and the night was exceptionally quiet. Do you see that brightly lit villa? That is the place where Iyoko lives. There are masters around to protect it. We will definitely suffer if we approach it rashly. It is not far from the capital. Maybe there will be support from the army. Akame pointed to the huge building complex in the distance and introduced it to Dustless and others. Let Mine do the long-range sniping. She is a shooting genius, so we will not be exposed. Looking at Mine, Dustless suggested. Of course, I can definitely blow his head. Being praised by Dustless in public, Mine was quite proud. She raised the taigu and looked like she was very strong. But, then Leonette lowered her voice and frowned. Boss asked us to complete the task tonight, but what if Iyoko stays at home and doesn't come out? How can mine snipe? And if the time is delayed for a long time, it will attract the attention of the capital. Minister Ernest attaches great importance to that guy. Lubbock also worried. Recently, his death was searching for them like crazy. If there was any trouble, she would come and find trouble with Night Raid. It's actually very simple to drive Iyoko out of the house. Dustless said and attracted everyone's attention. What plan? Night Raid asked curiously. It was difficult to think of a way to end the battle quickly. Hee. Dustless heard the words and just laughed twice. He did not say much. His eyes just looked at Tatsumi. The cunning look made Tatsumi vomit blood. Poochie. The water that he drank a few hours ago was all spat out. Tatsumi knew that Dustless was going to trick him again. Tatsumi went to set fire to the guy's house and he ran out. Dustless said with a smile, unless the guy wants to be burned alive, he will definitely run out of the courtyard. Why don't you go? Tatsumi asked with a black face. Akame and others are responsible for blocking the enemy, and I am responsible for protecting the safety of mine. Only you are free. If you don't go, who will go? Dustless asked calmly. You can also go, I am responsible for protecting mine. Tatsumi argued with reason. He was particularly unhappy to be ordered by Dustless. Because I am stronger than you, so I am more suitable to protect mine. She is a sniper. She is not good at close combat. I am the one who is best at close combat. Dustless said as a matter of fact. Tatsumi wanted to cry but had no tears. It seemed that he was the weakest in this team. He had no choice but to obey Dustless's order to be responsible for setting the fire. Mine, you decide who will set the fire. Tatsumi looked at the arrogant Mine expectantly with his bright eyes. Unexpectedly, Mine's words made Tatsumi dizzy with anger. You look so bad. If I team up with you, I will definitely be killed first. Dustless is right. You set the fire and he is responsible for covering me. Mine was very comfortable with Dustless's flattery just now. The feeling of floating had not disappeared yet. At the same time, she was disgusted with Tatsumi. This guy was much worse than Dustless. Chapter 16-14. Tatsumi even had the thought of committing suicide. He stared at Mine and Dustless sadly. He did not expect that these two people would go together, and now they even wore the same pants. Tatsumi's mind was blank and confused. Why don't you go? Looking at Tatsumi, who was unlucky, Dustless was particularly refreshed. Phew. Tatsumi did not forget to look at Dustless when he left. Then he went to set the fire without hesitation to carry out the stupid plan of Dustless. For this fantasy plan, Tatsumi naturally resisted. Last time he listened to Dustless's bad idea of dressing as a man. As a result, he was beaten violently by Aoka, who recognized him, and he even lost a few teeth. Tatsumi only hoped to survive this time. It was a good ending if he did not die. Isn't this a bit difficult for Tatsumi? Akane could not bear to stand up. In her eyes, although Tatsumi was unreliable, there was no doubt that he was also one of the companions. Don't worry, as long as I can lead Aoka out, I can kill him in an instant. Mine raised the Taigu pumpkin and said confidently. If Tatsumi can't even complete this kind of thing, I will personally send him home. Bullet suddenly said it was just setting a fire. If he could not complete this, then he should not be a killer. He should go home to wash and sleep quickly. Boom boom boom. Tatsumi did not let everyone down this time. After only a few minutes of sneaking in, he set a fire in several different directions, and the choking smoke rose to the sky. It's better that the kid is burned to death himself. Sitting lazily on the treetop, Dustless picked up a grass in his mouth, and his head lazily rested on his hands, looking at the situation in the distance. After a while he reminded, Mine, the guy named Aoka is coming out, get ready. Impossible. Mine was stunned and then denied, it is hundreds of meters away from Aoka's house. You don't have any instrument to help you. How can human eyes see clearly? If you don't believe it, you can have a look. Dustless shrugged and said indifferently. This? Mine nodded slightly. Through the precise optical telescope in her right eye, the scene hundreds of meters away was very clear. Because the house was burned, Iyoko, who escaped in a panic, was panting heavily, and a large number of followers followed behind him. What kind of freak is this guy? Mine scratched her head and couldn't figure out why a human being could see the face of a person hundreds of meters away. This was something that only monsters could do. Phew, Stable complex emotions. The Taigu in Mine's hand pointed to Yokel's head. Bang bang. After a while a gunshot rang out, and a golden ray of light shot out, piercing through the night sky and instantly closing in on Yokel's head. Pucci. The next second, his head was pierced by Mine. Good marksmanship. Dustless and others were amazed. At the same time, except for Dustless and Mine, the others rushed to the ambush location in advance. Since Yokel was killed, his men would definitely go crazy. If there was no murderer they could not explain to Minister Ernest, then they would die. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Sure enough, Yokel was killed, and it immediately attracted countless killers. They all rushed to the place where Mine shot the gun. The mission is completed, let's retreat. Mine stretched out and suggested. The idea is good, but we have no chance. Dustless's sight extended to the limit, he could see the wind and grass around him. He sighed, many people are coming, we are surrounded. Oh. Mine heard the words and suddenly retorted loudly, how long has it been, how can they catch up with us? Did someone lead them here? You are really right. Dustless shrugged and looked along his sight. He found that a thin figure was running quickly. This person was Tatsumi, and behind him was a group of boxing masters of Huangquan Temple. This idiot. Mine's mouth twitched when she saw this. She wanted to shoot Tatsumi, this idiot. Why did he run here? He could change to another position. This kid is also helpless. Dustless rarely helped Tatsumi and said plainly, don't you understand? Tatsumi means to attract all the enemies and annihilate them in one fell swoop. Annihilate them in one fell swoop? Mine's face darkened and she glanced over. There were at least dozens of people. Could they be annihilated at will? Tatsumi's action was a blatant deceptive behavior. It seems that there is no way. I came and the others have left. There are only 3 of us. Dustless frowned. It seemed that Mine himself and Tatsumi were all besieged. This idiot, let me kill Tatsumi first. Mine, who was angry, shouted. The pumpkin even shone and aimed at Tatsumi's head. Didn't I say before, you are responsible for sniping, and I am responsible for close combat? Dustless jumped down from the treetop and moved his waist. Under Mine's horrified gaze, a large group of lights condensed in his hand. Yasukani no Magatama. The golden light bullets instantly shot out like countless shooting stars. They were exceptionally dazzling, and they instantly tore apart and exterminated all living creatures. Pucci. 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 Under Mine's surprised gaze, the masters of Huangquan Temple were slaughtered in an instant. The situation was almost overwhelming. There was no difference between the strong and the weak. Anyone who was in contact with the light would definitely die. Everyone showed a painful expression. Their bodies had been destroyed and pierced by the light. They died horribly. Chapter 16:15. Looking at the horrified body, even with Mine's temperament, she was also shocked. Needless to say, Tatsumi was already scared and panicked. Grew. Mine and Tatsumi both choked and looked at Dustless with awe. No matter how the times changed, people's nature of following the strong would not change. This guy. I'm not in the same dimension as him. Up to now, Tatsumi also knew the gap with Dustless. This guy was not a human being. Was this kind of trick that killed dozens of people in an instant that a human being should have? Tatsumi's eyes looking at Dustless also changed. Is this guy a human who disguised as a super dangerous species? Tatsumi secretly guessed. In fact, not only Tatsumi had this strange idea, even Mine was no exception. She was shocked by that kind of large-scale trick. It could be confirmed that it was not a taigu, then it could only be a super dangerous species in the legend. Hey, you are not a super dangerous species that turned into a human being. Taigu aimed at Dustless. Mine asked unkindly, you are very suspicious. After hearing the words, Dustless just glanced at Mine faintly. The girl wore a pink dress, a breeze came, the pink ponytail danced with the wind, the delicate face was full of alert, the face was full of confidence. It seemed that she could kill all the enemies. She was very confident in her strength. And? At this time, Dustless's brows slightly raised, staring at the forest behind Mine, his eyebrows flashed an imperceptible coldness. Phew phew phew. Dustless's incarnation flashed, he appeared behind Mine in a flash like a light, and he held Mine tightly with the speed of lightning. Bastard, what do you want to do? Mine was shocked by this sudden move, her face suddenly became as red as an apple. When she was about to point at Dustless's nose and scold him, a sudden change occurred. Damn, your reaction is really sharp. A black shadow came out of the woods, it was only an inch away from mine. Even the cold sword that had been out of the sheath had been taken out of the sheath, it wanted to cut mine into pieces. Damn it, mine scolded when she saw this. Her anger toward Dustless also disappeared in an instant. If it weren't for Dustless, maybe she would have been killed. Thinking about it, mine felt a chill. The Imperial Fist Temple attacker who suddenly appeared shouted. The crescent blade in his hand had already stabbed forward. It was so fast that only an afterimage could be seen. So fast. Mine's face changed slightly. Because this person changed his speed quickly and ran in an S-shaped route, almost every time it was a fleeting moment. In an instant, it had approached mine and Dustless. Since you're working so hard, I'll prepare a luxurious funeral for you. Dustless murmured as he glanced at the black afterimage. In the void, countless sharp black blades attacked from all directions. Dowbreaker 90, Black Coffin. Although this person ran fast compared with Dowbreaker 90, Black Coffin, he was insignificant. His speed was as slow as a turtle, and he was killed by Black Coffin in an instant. Poochie, poochie, poochie. The sound of the body being cut suddenly sounded. The attacker of Imperial Fist Temple disappeared instantly. There were only some bones on the ground, the broken bones and the dismembered internal organs. Vomit, 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 vomit. Seeing such a bloody scene, Tatsumi couldn't help but vomit. Although he had been an assassin for a few days, it was the first time for him to witness such a miserable ending. Cough, cough, cough. Mine coughed twice awkwardly and immediately jumped out of Dustless's arms. She pointed at Dustless and said proudly, "Don't think that you can hug me casually because you saved me." Really? Wuxia just glanced at her coldly and muttered to himself, "I wonder who was the one who was wriggling in my arms like a cat. You?" After these words, Mine instantly blushed and stamped her feet. Then she quickly turned her back to Dustless. It couldn't be helped. It was a nerve reflex that couldn't help. The abnormality of Dustless and Mine attracted the attention of other members of the night raid. When everyone rushed over, the scene was already full of screams. Among the dozens of corpses, only 3 people were alive. Mine, Dustless, and Tatsumi, who was vomiting. In the early morning of the next day, the scorching sun filled the whole sky. Yesterday's task was completed very well. You really didn't let me down, Dustless. Patting Dustless's shoulder, the boss Najenda looked very relieved. As for Tatsumi, he had been ignored by him. Boss? Glancing at Najenda helplessly, Dustless said bluntly, "The boss has a task for me, otherwise she will not come to me early in the morning." "Oh, you found it?" Najenda was surprised and immediately admitted it generously. She cautiously said, "There is indeed a dangerous person." "Is it the beheading Zank?" "The boss came to witness it because she wants me to kill him." "It's better to take back the kid's Taigu, right?" "How do you know?" Najenda was surprised. She didn't tell anyone about it. "It's very simple." Dustless explained and complained to himself. Although the night raid is a killer, the essential purpose is to eradicate the corruption in this country. Those turbulent factors the future country does not need, are naturally the first target of the night raid. Chapter 16:16. But, at this point, Dustless's voice fell silent. He was not afraid of Zank the Decapitator. That kid was just a clown. The reason why the Empire could collapse in the future was undoubtedly due to the efforts of Scarlet Eye and the others. However, there was almost no trace of them in the rise of the new country. It was really not worth it to sacrifice for them. It's good that you know the beheading Zank. He is different from other enemies. He is a Taigu user. In the duel between Taigu, one party will definitely die, so... Najenda's tone said until here and her voice stopped. She looked at Dustless with expectation. The meaning was self-evident. She probably expected Dustless to kill the beheading Zank alone. Unfortunately, his plan was doomed to fail. "Najenda. Next time when you discuss this kind of secret with me, you'd better look behind you." Pointing to the position of the bedroom door, Dustless spread his hands to show that it had nothing to do with him. "You?" Najenda turned her head and looked. It was Akame and others who were wearing pajamas. It is too dangerous for such a dangerous person to be solved by Dustless alone. Taigu users should be solved by us who have Taigu. Akame took a step forward and volunteered. Looking carefully, Akame and Mine as well as Leon and Gil, including Najenda, were all wearing pajamas. Their curvaceous figures were exposed, but at this moment, everyone was immersed in the beheading Zank incident, and ignored the sneaky eyes. Lubbock was still sleeping, Bullet and Tatsumi went out to patrol, Such a beautiful scenery only benefited Dustless. Leave it to me, I also want to see the difference between the Taiga users. Stretching deeply, Dustless walked out of the quilt, opened the curtains and enjoyed the morning sun comfortably. He closed his eyes and his expression was a little lazy. He closed his eyes very lazily, murmuring and humming a song. He seemed to be in a good mood. This guy, Mine looked at Dustless with a little stupor. At present he was the opposite of the usual pompous Dustless. He looked very peaceful, warm and trustworthy. The rising sun shone on Dustless's face, which was particularly charming. I didn't expect this guy to have such a gentle side. Thinking of the experience of being hugged by Dustless yesterday, Mine couldn't help blushing. She looked around subconsciously, but found that Chi Tong and others were staring at Dustless. Somehow Mine was quite uncomfortable. Out of a woman's nature, Mine could feel the strange sight of Chi Tong and others. Dustless in this state was particularly lazy, revealing an indescribable unique temperament. Unlike his usual sloppy self, he was very confident. No, let's go together this time. Mine took the lead in retorting with a tone that she would definitely kill Zank. Do as you like. Glancing at Mine in surprise, Dustless felt strange. He was not confident when Mine stared at him. After all, this guy still hated him a few days ago. Today, her tone vaguely had a sense of protection. Let's do it after dark. Seeing that everyone insisted, Najenda no longer stopped them. Everything was opposite. There were advantages and disadvantages. Killing Zank in a group could also increase their experience in the future. After all, his death was a real Taiga user. They would meet this guy sooner or later. It was good to do an experiment in advance now. But I have a suggestion. Mine suddenly spoke at this time and rationally suggested, this is a battle between Taiga users. I suggest not to let Tatsumi participate in it. Killing Zank is too difficult for him. No problem, I will explain this to Tatsumi personally. Let's do it tonight. Sneak into the capital. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A cold wind swept across the vast land. The empire at midnight was especially frightening. In some small alleys one could even hear hysterical curses. The capital at night was a hell in human skin. It seems that the boss failed. Tatsumi followed again. On the abandoned building, several black shadows were looming in the night sky. Only people with excellent eyesight could see these figures clearly with the faint moonlight. The person who complained about Tatsumi was Dustless. What are you looking at? You can come without Taigu, why can't I come? Tatsumi found Dustless's strange eyes, and suddenly shouted with dissatisfaction. Whatever you want, don't blame us for not reminding you when you die, but, looking at the wanted order in his hand, Dustless was quite entangled and complained, this must be Isthetha's revenge on me deliberately. How can I be so ugly? Just a few days ago, Dustless was also inevitably wanted, and his wanted order was all over the street. Killing Zank, the guy specially selects the person who is alone. Each of us is divided into two groups to walk on the street and attract that guy out. Mine and Hill were a group, Bullet and Tatsumi were a group, Lionel and Lubbock were a group. As for Dustless, this time he and Akame were a group to search for Killing Zank. On the dark street, Dustless and Akame walked side by side. The bottomless street was particularly gloomy and terrifying. The deeper they went, the more obvious the screams were. We don't seem to be the target. Dustless shook his head slightly and remembered Tatsumi, who was targeted in the original work. He grabbed Akame's small hand and rushed to the area where Tatsumi and Bullet were responsible. Being suddenly attacked by Dustless, Akame struggled for a while and gave up after she had no result. She let Dustless take her to the place. Chapter 16-17. On the other side, Bullet and Tatsumi were also struggling to track down Zank. Damn Dustless. Tatsumi cursed Dustless in his heart as he walked. Since meeting this guy, his life has fallen into the most miserable period. Tatsumi, when performing a task, you have to concentrate. Looking at the absent-minded Tatsumi, Bullet suddenly shouted, otherwise at your level, you will never surpass Dustless in your life. Bullet had to come up with his secret weapon. The words Dustless were spiritual food for Tatsumi. So I still have a chance to surpass that guy? Sure enough, after hearing the words Dustless, Tatsumi suddenly felt refreshed and asked with great expectation, I also hope that I will surpass Dustless in the future. Unfortunately, speaking of this, Tatsumi's mouth twitched obviously, thinking of Dustless's abnormal record, like a deflated ball, he suddenly became very dispirited. That guy is very strong, but he is just a human being. We are all human beings. If you can work hard, you may directly surpass him in the future. Bullet smiled and persuaded, but he smiled bitterly in his heart. Don't talk about Tatsumi, he can't do it himself. He said this just to cheer Tatsumi up. Happy. On a tall building, a strange man with a hideous face looked down at Bullet and the depressed Tatsumi. His evil face was directly distorted, revealing a thrilling killing intent. Since you are so depressed, I will send you to heaven. This person is Zank and the person he is staring at is Tatsumi. Where did those two guys go? After running a few streets, Dustless did not find any trace of Tatsumi. In desperation he could only spread out his observation haki. Why are you sure that Zank will look for Tatsumi? That guy is temperamental and his goal may be us. Akame blinked her beautiful eyes and asked. Because that guy looks like he died early. Dustless curled his lips and snorted disdainfully. This was the case in the original work. The poor Tatsumi was the first to be beheaded by Zank. If Akame hadn't arrived in time, that kid would have died long ago. Found it. After a while, Dustless's closed eyes suddenly opened, shooting out a burst of cold light. Is it Tatsumi? Scarlet Pupil asked expectantly. She was even more curious about Dustless's ability. This guy stood still, but he said that he found Tatsumi. After searching a few streets, he didn't find Tatsumi. No, Dustless shook his head. He shifted his gaze and stared at the dark street on the left. The silhouette with fiery eyes appeared on the surface of the water. We didn't find Tatsumi, but we did find Zank. No, rather than saying that we found him, it's better to say that this guy took the initiative to find us. Facing Zank's shocked gaze, Dustless appeared extremely calm. Akame's katana was unsheathed, like a knight guarding in front of Dustless. What a pity, Dustless sighed in his heart. He originally wanted to use Zank to kill Tatsumi, but he didn't expect this guy to find him and Scarlet Pupil in advance. According to Scarlet Pupil's temperament, she would never let this guy go so easily. Ta. It was also at this time that the alley on the other side seemed to have noticed the abnormality here. A burst of hurried footsteps ran over without stopping. It's Tatsumi and Bullet? After figuring out who the newcomers were, Dustless frowned slightly, sighing inwardly that Zanka was so unlucky. He didn't encounter Tatsumi and Bullet, who were relatively weak, but he encountered himself and Akame instead. Happy. Zank's excited laughter came out of the beheading man's mouth. He muttered to himself, I'm so lucky to have met you too. Fortunately, I didn't sneak attack the combination just now, otherwise I would definitely be finished. Although that kid is very weak, that strong guy is unreliable. I'm not sure if I can win against him. Kid and strong guy? Scarlet Pupil raised her eyebrows slightly when she heard this. She glanced at Zank in surprise. You should be talking about Bullet and Tatsumi, right? Dustless said lightly and asked with great interest, You're called Zank, right? You're right, Bullet's strength is not something you can compete with. But now that you're treating me and Scarlet Pupil as prey, do you think we're easier to deal with than Bullet? Happy. Zank laughed when he heard this and said proudly, Yes, that strong guy is called Bullet. I felt a threat from that man, so I changed the prey to the two of you. How is it? My eyes are good, right? Happy. Who asked you two to be weaker than him? Is that so? Dustless glanced at him coldly when he heard this. Then light flickered on his right arm, and a slender golden greatsword was formed in an instant. Swish. Dustless turned into a golden light and instantly appeared in front of Zank. The greatsword containing golden light had already swept toward Zank. Pucci. This guy didn't even have time to react before he was instantly crippled by Dustless, and one of his arms was easily cut off. How is this possible? I didn't see it at all. Zank looked at the figure in front of him in disbelief. His bulging eyeballs were terrifying, as if they were about to fall out. Your eyes are good, but Bullet's is stronger than yours. This is a fact. However, Scarlet Pupil and I, who are hiding our auras, are far more dangerous than Bullet and Tatsumi. Chapter 16-18. So fast. Akame was also stunned. She realized that when Dustless appeared, Zhanka's arm had already fallen. It was too fast, everything happened in a split second. In fact, if it weren't for the sound of Zank's arm falling off, Scarlet, I would still be in the dark and wouldn't have realized what had happened. How is this possible? Zank was dumbfounded. He even forgot about the pain of losing his arm. His eyes were fixed on the young silhouette in front of him. That thin body and pale face, It was obvious that he was a pampered young master. How could he possess such unprecedented strength? Damn it! Jianghu vomited blood. He thought that the hungry wolf found a fat sheep, but the cruel scene in front of him made him shocked to find that the weak sheep suddenly turned into a fierce tiger. Even if I die, I will drag you to the grave with me. Jianghu's eyes were fierce, and he quickly launched the ability of Taigu. Buzz! The Taigu tied to his forehead flashed with emerald light, and then Jianghu laughed arrogantly. Ah! I will win this duel. Jianghu's Taigu, omnipotent 5 vision, observer. A Taigu with 5 abilities: insight, farsight, X-ray, future vision, and illusion. Insight could see through the other person's mind by observing the expression. Farsight could see things in the distance. X-ray could ignore obstacles to see the target. Future vision could see the next situation through the subtle movements of muscles. Illusion could make the other person see illusions. Ah! Are you hallucinating now? I am the closest person to you. Jianghu laughed arrogantly in his heart. His other arm had already picked up the big sword cruelly. Dustless in front of him was motionless. His expression always remained cold. Deep in his calm eyes there were no waves. Ah! Go to hell. With an excited shout, Jianghu's right arm held the big sword and slashed down. Puchi! Blood splashed into the void and scattered all over the ground. It showed a blood-red plum blossom shape, which was extremely strange. At the same time, a huge body knelt on the ground. How is this possible? The injured person. Why is it me? I should be the closest person to you now. Zank the Decapitator roared at the sky. Looking closely, a scorched wound had appeared on his chest, and the fatal wound was rapidly devouring his life force. A demon like you would even lay hands on your own family? Jianghu, who noticed that his vitality was gone, was furious. His face was full of fear. In front of this guy he was trampled miserably like a little mouse. The so-called super weapon Taigu was useless. It's too funny. Without even looking at Zank, Dustless's face only showed a touch of ridicule. The ignorant are fearless. Playing Genjutsu in front of me who has Rinnegan Sharingan, I really don't understand where your confidence comes from. No matter what kind of illusion, the essence was a spiritual attack. For Dustless, who had a huge and invincible spiritual power, this little Taigu wanted to use illusion on him. It was completely humiliating. It's almost time to come. Glancing at the figures coming from the depths of the dark street, Dustless's cheeks flashed a strange smile. He leaned close to Jianghu's ear, smiled coldly, and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, "Now, I will let you see what a real genjutsu is. Use your last time to kill Tatsumi, my loyal soldier." Ordering me? Jianghu the Decapitator was furious when he heard that. Do you think I can be ordered casually? He opened his mouth, and when he was about to mock Dustless, a majestic spiritual power invaded Jianghu the Decapitator's mind. It was more than hundreds of times stronger than Taigu. Jianghu the Decapitator instantly became strange, and he turned to stare at the intruder who suddenly appeared. Jianghu the Decapitator suddenly stood up and went crazy. Regardless of the many wounds on his body, he crazily slashed at Tatsumi. Only careful people could find that the depths of this guy's eyes lost their luster. He was just a puppet, and the person who controlled him was Dustless. Why did this homicidal maniac suddenly attack me? Tatsumi looked at Jianghu the Decapitator, who was bloodthirsty, and he wanted to cry but had no tears. He just wanted to witness the scene of Dustless being brutally beaten. Who knew that Jianghu the Decapitator's brain suddenly went crazy, and he did not hesitate to kill him together. Clang. Tatsumi was not weak either. He immediately pulled out a big sword to fight back against Jianghu the Decapitator. Boom boom boom. However, Tatsumi was obviously not the opponent of Jianghu the Decapitator. The two sides just met face to face. Tatsumi was blown dozens of meters away by the force from the giant sword, and he spat out blood. Jianghu the Decapitator chased after him. When he was about to kill him completely, a shadow in armor fell from the sky, and the cold light that followed cut Jianghu the Decapitator's throat. Puchi. The cold light flashed fiercely, smashed Jianghu the Decapitator in one fell swoop, and his head was smashed into pieces. The sky even had a horrible bloody rain full of the smell of blood. Looking up, it was Tatsumi's backer, Bullet. This guy really likes to meddle in other people's business. Originally, I was not interested in you, but if you want to die, then you can't blame me for being ruthless. Dustless raised his eyebrows slightly, staring at the majestic Bullet, and a piercing chill flashed across his cheeks. He just wanted to kill Tatsumi with a borrowed knife. If Bullet meddled in other people's business, he could only kill him as well. It's good that everyone is fine. Akame breathed a sigh of relief. Killing Jianghu the Decapitator so easily was beyond her expectations. There was no such thing as a stalemate. Dustless's attack was a one-sided crushing and annihilation. Chapter 16-19. Looking at Tatsumi, who was safe and sound, Dustless was quite upset. This guy's protagonist aura made him ridiculously lucky. Every time there was a savior who helped him. In this case, then he could only get rid of this savior. Bullet. You are really powerful, Dustless. Bullet liberated the armor and looked at the wound on Zhang's abdomen. Dustless almost crushed his internal organs with one sword, and all the internal organs were burned by the light sword, and the smell of the strange barbecue filled the air. Is this thing a taigu? Looking at the emerald ornaments scattered on the ground, Tatsumi excitedly picked them up and put them on his hand. How about I use this thing? It's not up to you to decide. Glancing at Tatsumi coldly, Dustless's palm broke out a strong gravitational force. Wanshang Tianyu. The taigu in Tatsumi's hand suddenly fell into the hands of Dustless, and he said without hesitation, the ownership of this thing can only be decided by the boss. Tatsumi was angry when he heard the words. He wanted to beat Dustless, but he retracted his hand. The strength of this guy was too terrifying. 100 or even 1,000 of him were not his opponents. The two sides were completely incomparable. At the same time, Gil and Mine also heard the news and came to look at the body on the ground. The two women were relieved, and then everyone returned to the base after a few words. Tatsumi, try it first. Inside the base of the night raid, the voice of the boss Najenda sounded. Thank you, boss, I will not let you down. Tatsumi excitedly took over the taigu that was handed over. This was the relic of Zhang. Tatsumi, you have to believe in your ability. Tatsumi's boss, Bullet, encouraged loudly. I will, brother. Tatsumi heard the words and nodded excitedly. He immediately learned the appearance of Zhang and put the taigu on his head. He stared at Bullet in front of him, and then he was in a trance. This is... After a while, Bullet's naked appearance came into his eyes. What did you see? Mine, Leonette, and others asked. Hee. Dustless smirked and deliberately raised his voice. I heard the guy Zhang said that his taigu has the ability of 5 vision, that is, insight, telescopic, clairvoyant, future vision, and illusion. Tatsumi is so fascinated, he probably saw Bullet's naked body. Tsk. Saliva is flowing out. Sure enough, Tatsumi and Bullet are both gay. No wonder you two get along so well. Puchi. Tatsumi turned his head angrily when he heard the words. However, before he turned his head, he was sent flying with a punch. Bang bang bang. Leonette, who was straightforward, gave Tatsumi a few punches without hesitation, and then forcibly took away Tatsumi's taigu, and said to the boss directly, such obscene props should not appear inside the night raid. Not bad. Chi Tong, Mine, and others nodded and agreed with Leonie's suggestion. What would happen if this thing fell into the hands of a man with bad intentions? Since this is the case, give it to the headquarters of the Revolutionary Army. The boss Najenda thought deeply and nodded. It was too dangerous to leave this strange taigu in the night raid, and it was not useful. Recently, there are many corrupt officials who have no conscience. You continue to go to the imperial capital to perform the task. You must eliminate the root of the problem. Najenda said with a murderous tone. This bastard is really hateful. I finally got a taigu and it disappeared because of Dustless. Damn it, Wuchen couldn't have been sent down by the heavens to deliberately go against me, right? Tatsumi had a sad expression, not to mention that he was punched by Leonette for a few times. Even the taigu that was eager to see through also said goodbye to him. Tatsumi's heart was broken into ice. In the magnificent palace. General Esteth, you have made a contribution to defeat the alien race, and you are rewarded with thousands of gold. Sitting on the dragon throne made of gold, the young Emperor Esteth said. Thank you, Your Majesty, please give these things to my subordinates. Esteth nodded. Although this little guy was the emperor, she did not respect him at all. After all, he was just a plaything of the minister Ernest. He was just a puppet prop used to control the empire. General, what other wishes do you have? It seemed that she felt sorry for his death. The young emperor said generously, everything you want will be realized. Your Majesty is wise. A tall and strong man walked out from the back of the emperor's dragon throne, holding a piece of meat in his hand and biting it. All the wishes of General Esteth will be realized. Do you have other wishes? Isteth bowed her head and thought for a moment. She suddenly remembered the outline of Dustless in her mind. In the past, Isteth had no goals in life because she was invincible in the world. Now Dustless suddenly rose. Isteth was full of expectations for the future. I have 3 wishes at present. The first is to catch Dustless, the bastard boy. Thinking of Dustless's wicked smile, Isteth immediately gnashed her teeth and immediately continued, as for the next 2 wishes, I hope to form a special team to deal with the night attack. The other wish is to fall in love, and there is already a suitable candidate. Fall in love? Minister Ernest and the Emperor looked at each other and they were both shocked. After dozens of seconds they stared at Isteth tightly. General Isteth actually wants to fall in love, and there is a suitable candidate. Who is so lucky to get the general's pity? Although Minister Ernest said so, in his heart he felt sorry for the person Isteth liked. Chapter 1620. Who is it? Isteth was in a trance when she heard the words and immediately explained, although there is a gap between that guy and the person I like, he is also the closest. Who on earth is so powerful? The young emperor was also interested. The person who could make Isteth favor, the whole world's population would be curious about him. I have said it before. Isteth said meaningfully, that guy is very strong and he is not from the imperial capital like me. He has a big goal and is ambitious at the same time. Although he is not suitable in some other aspects, it doesn't matter. It is God's blessing that I can find that guy. Isteth saw through it quite clearly. There was no perfect human being in this world, and everything could not be changed according to one's own logical thinking. You said it? Minister Ornat was also surprised when he heard this. After recalling what Isteth said, he said loudly, Is it that Dustless? That guy is a member of the night raid. The young emperor frowned. However, Isteth did not pay attention to him. Her eyes just looked at the big guy next to him. Minister Ornat was the emperor's father. He was more like a father than a father. Yes, it is him. Isteth nodded and immediately said without concealing, However, I just intend to raise that guy as a pet. Dustless left a deep impression on me. It is difficult to forget him. That guy humiliated me again and again. I must catch him back and feed him. Since she was young, Isteth had always put a collar on others. Only last time was an exception. Not to mention that she suffered a loss in the hands of Dustless, she was also put on a collar by him. It was unbearable. Isteth was always thinking about revenge against Dustless. I see. Minister Ornat was surprised after hearing it, and he was too lazy to continue talking nonsense with Isteth. Once this woman decided on something, no one could pull her back. Then congratulations to the general for your success. Minister Ornat knew that his denial could not change the will of Isteth. In this case, it was better to sell a favor to Isteth so that the alliance between them could be more consolidated. Then we must capture that guy. The young emperor also agreed. Since the honorable father had spoken as a good son, he naturally had to agree to it as well. Although the two of them were not related by blood, there was no doubt that Osnat's relationship with the emperor was even stronger than that of a father. The emperor would agree to all of Osnat's conditions. In another direction. Pucci. In the pitch-black room, a large amount of blood suddenly appeared in the air and covered the floor. Looking around, the entire room was filled with corpses. They had all been killed in an extremely cruel manner. They had all been cut in half at the waist. TSK, this weapon is really scary. Dustless quietly looked at the scissors in Hill's hand and couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. No matter who it was, if they were hit by this thing they could end up being cut in half. This group of people had all died in such a miserable way. Retreat, mine and Hill. Glancing at the pink-haired girl, Dustless took the lead to leave the smoky room. Corpses had been piled up everywhere, and they were all killed mercilessly by Dustless and others. This guy dares to order us too. This newcomer is too arrogant. He has no rules at all. Facing us two veterans he should try to please us. Mine hummed and said, deliberately raising her voice to let Dustless hear. Dustless walked away. Even if he heard it, he turned a deaf ear to Mine's complaints. After joining the night raid for so many days, he had heard her complaints and had become immune. Is that so? Hill's naturally dull little face showed a meaningful smile. Then you didn't refuse his order. Hill, you figure out your position for me. The two of us are good teammates in the same trench. Mine blushed after being stunned for a moment. Unconsciously, her teammates were all turned against her. Whiz. Just at this time, Dustless suddenly stopped and looked at the forest on the left side with a cold face. There was a cold gaze looking at them. Is there an enemy? Hill and Mine made a fighting posture. They looked in the direction of Dustless, and a girl in the Special Zones Guard uniform came into view. It's really her. Seeing this person appear, Dustless was not surprised. What should come will come. In the original work, Hill was killed by this guy ruthlessly. I spend a lot of time waiting every day and finally you are here. Night Raid. After the voice fell, the good-looking girl immediately turned into an evil spirit. Her distorted face was full of horror and killing intent. A surging chill rushed to Dustless and others. This person was a member of the Special Zones Guard, Selu Ubietas. You are a group of evil people, you must be punished with justice. Selu Ubietas came out of the dark woods with a white puppy. Dustless knew that it was the Taigu of Selu Ubietas, the demon beast transformed into 100-armed giant, the dog that had been called Xiaoka. It looked harmless on the surface, but it was actually a very ferocious existence. Is this woman's head broken? The situation is not clear. The current situation is 3v1. She has no chance to win. Chapter 1621. Is there something wrong with this woman's head? She hasn't figured out the situation. The current situation is 3v1, she has no chance to win. Mine sneered coldly, this stupid woman didn't even seem to figure out the basic situation. The people who were at an absolute disadvantage were not her and Hill, but Seleucid Ubiquitas. Hee. Seleucid Ubiquitas heard the words and slightly raised his mouth, revealing a ferocious arc. There is no weakness or advantage in punishing evil, I just need to annihilate all of you. Seleucid Ubiquitas' mouth opened, a dark muzzle was exposed, and a dazzling bullet was shot from the front. Bang bang bang. Several shots were shot in succession. The dense fire was shot to Dustless and other two people. Phew. Hill and Mine, who realized the danger, retreated, and only Dustless was like a stone, standing still as if it had nothing to do with him. Go to hell. Seleucid Ubiquitas felt pity. Although he was a little disappointed that two people ran away, it was not bad to kill one of the members of the Night Raid. Bang bang bang. Dustless's body was penetrated by the bullets, there were more than a dozen holes, his heart was destroyed, he would definitely die. Idiot, why don't you dodge? Mine saw the wounds on Dustless's body, her tone suddenly increased several times, and the Taigu in her hand shone with a huge dazzling light of destruction. Boom boom boom. A ray of destructive light shot out, it was several times stronger than usual. Dustless's death was a big blow to Mine. After all, Dustless had saved her. Phew. The thick light came to him, Seleucid Ubiquitas was shocked, he quickly said to his Taigu, Little Ku, block it for me. Ow. A strange sound came out from the mouth of this strange creature, then his body became countless times bigger, revealing his horrible and gloomy appearance. He blocked in front of Seleucid Ubiquitas like a meat shield. Boom boom boom. However, Mine, who was angry, was also much more powerful, she instantly destroyed this biotype Taigu. Puchi. There was a huge hole in Coco's abdomen. Even her organs had been completely crushed. The hole was large enough for a person to walk through. Little Co. You bastard, how dare you? Celia Ubiquitas' face was distorted even more. The black hole in her mouth was exposed again, and she unceremoniously shot a bullet at Mine. Whoosh. The dense firepower net of bullets came head-on, and there was no way to escape. Mine was going to be shot into a sieve. Damn it. Mine scolded secretly. She was sweating. She couldn't escape from both sides. There was no shelter around her. She was about to be shot. Am I going to die? Mine's face was full of unwillingness. She was not afraid of death, but if she could, Mine hoped to drag Cyril Ubiquitas to be buried with her. After all, Dustless had helped her and saved her life. If she couldn't help him take revenge, she would have no face to meet Dustless in the underworld. Whoosh. At this time, a black shadow stood in front of Mine without hesitation, protecting her like a shield. Gil? Staring at the purple girl in front of her, Mine was very moved. Clang. Gil held the scissor-shaped Taigu and blocked it in front of her. All the bullets fell on the Taigu. Because Gil's Taigu was extremely hard, it could be used as a shield. Damn it. Celia Ubiquitas saw the situation and scolded. Looking at the two people who were close, she felt extremely unlucky. After all, she almost killed Mine. At the same time, she hated Gil. Since you like to meddle in other people's business, go to hell. Celia Ubiquitas screamed with a distorted face. She opened her mouth and shot countless bullets at the same time. Bang bang bang. The result was the same as before, the bullet attack was blocked. Your good luck seems to be used up, I am going to avenge that guy now. Mine stepped forward, the muzzle of the Taigu pumpkin had been aimed at Celia Ubiquitas. Haha. When Celia Ubiquitas saw this, he revealed a devilish smile and said coldly, before that, please take a look behind the two of you. Gil and Mine were both stunned, they turned their heads at the same time, a black shadow was staring at them with murderous intent. Ow ow ow. Celia Ubiquitas' tiger roared like a beast, its body became dozens of times bigger, then his strong and powerful big hand caught Mine and Gil instantly. Damn it. All this happened so suddenly that Gil and Mine were still in a daze. When they turned around, Taigu, who had become bigger, had already caught the two. Ah! I finally succeeded, justice triumphed over evil. The unscrupulous laughter lingered in the black night sky and did not disappear for a long time. Celia Ubiquitas' cheeks raised a smile of victory. It was a great victory to kill 3 members of the night raid. Master. I finally avenged you, I successfully killed 3 members of the night raid. Damn it, Celia Ubiquitas is so despicable and insidious. He deliberately let the biotype Taigu pretend to be dead. In fact, he was looking for opportunities to attack us. Damn it, we were fooled. Mine struggled hard but found that it did not work at all. The strength of the Taigu was too strong, Gil could not escape, let alone Mine who was weaker. The two looked pale for a while. Taigu, crush these 2 evil criminals for me. Chapter 1622. Ah! The biotype Taigu increased its strength, Mine and Gil immediately screamed in pain, the two were sweating and the pain made their faces as pale as paper. Crush them to avenge the master. Celia Ubiquitas, whose cheeks were distorted, roared like a crazy ghost. A few days ago, the night attack assassinated her master, Captain Oka of the Special Zones Police Force. Therefore, Celia Ubiquitas hated the night attack, she could not wait to drink their blood and swallow their bones. She came out every night and today she finally encountered the night attack. Oh. The biotype Taigu nodded slightly after receiving the order, then it was angry and increased the power output. When it was about to completely crush the 2 women, a sharp light broke the situation. Puchi. Puchi. The light penetrated the arms of the biotype Taigu, 2 crisp sounds were heard in succession. Coco's arms fell, Gil and Mine were able to escape from the cage and they were relaxed. Who dares to stop the justice from defeating the evil? Unforgivable. When he saw this, Celia Ubiquitas flew into a rage, and his sharp tone became several times louder. He was like a malicious spirit that had come to claim his life, and his scarlet eye sockets were filled with a bloody glow. The veins of blood that were like spiderwebs spread throughout his entire eye sockets, and his entire body was filled with a raging and ominous aura. Everyone's gaze swept over. Under the night sky, that faintly discernible thin figure was exceptionally conspicuous. You are dustless. Mine and Gil were even more anxious, they were grateful to the savior, but when they saw the lazy face, the 2 women were stunned. Don't show such an unexpected expression, this is the imperial capital, and we are attacking at night. The people who can save you are naturally our own people. Will those Empire soldiers be kind enough to save you too? Dustless asked calmly as if nothing happened, and at the same time he glanced at the bloody biotype Taigu Coco and whispered, "It is just a tool, but it can also regenerate quickly and even pretend to be dead. It is very capable and it is so humane." On the surface, Dustless was praising, but in fact, his tone was as cold as frost, and he flicked a light from his finger, and it went straight to the biotype Taigu. Laser. A dazzling light shot out and flew to Coco's head. Boom boom boom. In an instant, the night sky shone brightly. Following that, a bright flame soared into the sky. Coco's head was instantly destroyed, charred by the scorching wave of fire. You bastard. Celia Ubiquitas' eyes were about to burst. Originally he hated Dustless to the bone. According to the news from his death, he was the culprit who killed Oka. Now he also crushed her Taigu, the anger in her heart had already reached an intolerable level. This guy has already been twisted. There's no saving him. Dustless's face was as cold as ice as his fingertips glowed with a high-density light. His finger was aimed at the head of Celia Ubiquitas. Although this guy looked pretty good, it did not mean that Dustless would be compassionate. Dustless was not a man who could not move when he saw a beauty. It was even more impossible for him to be merciful to Selyu Ubiquitas. This kind of person was brainwashed and her mind was poisoned. Only by sending her to heaven could she be saved. Go to hell, remember, the person who killed you is called Dustless. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. After the voice fell, Dustless flicked a dazzling light from his finger. I won't be killed so easily, and even if I die, I will drag you, this group of evil criminals, to be buried with me. You evil people all deserve to die. Selyu Ubiquitas roared like a madman. He hated Dustless and the others to the core. His resentment had reached an unbelievable level. He couldn't wait to drag Dustless and the others down to hell. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In the face of the light, Selyu Ubiquita's reaction was very agile. She actually came over miraculously and opened her mouth to shoot a lot of bullets. Bang bang bang. Dustless's body was penetrated again, but nothing happened. The damaged wound was quickly repaired by the ability of the glinting fruit. Damn it, damn it. Why does justice lose to this evil person? Clenching her fists, Selyu Ubiquitas was unwilling to give up. What? This kind of shallow reason seems to be very simple. Slowly walking toward Selyu Ubiquitas, looking down at the frustrated girl, Dustless said coldly, because your justice is not as strong as my strength. The so-called justice is determined by the winner, so I am the winner, I am the justice. Instead, you are an evil person. Then I will destroy you with brute force. I don't care so much. Xiaoka, use that trick. Selyu Ubiquitas glanced at the biotype Taigu Xiaoka with madness in his eyes. His words were determined to destroy everything. You still have tricks? Faint ripples appeared in the calm eyes. Dustless whispered, such a positive tone, you seem to have the despair of death, which slightly makes me look at you differently. Ao 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 ao. After receiving Selyu's order, the biotype Taigu Xiaoka immediately took the lead. Then he seemed to have taken hormones, his body expanded several times in an instant, and his white body also changed greatly. Instead, it was replaced by blood-black hair, and the eyeballs that were as big as copper were also full of rage. Xiaoka's strength will increase after using fury, this time you? Selyu regained her confidence and said proudly to Dustless, but she did not know that this guy had disappeared. You're just SOSO. The next moment, when Dustless appeared again, his feet stepped on Xiaoka's head. Chapter 1623. What a fast speed. Gil and Mine looked at each other, their expressions were a little numb. It was not that they had never seen the market, but Dustless was too fast and he disappeared in a flash. When he appeared again, he had already appeared on the head of the biological dog-type Taigu. Dustless, this guy. I thought he was dead just now and I was sad for him once. Now it seems that he is still alive, I really don't deserve it. Mine squeezed out the crystal water stains from the corner of her eyes, and she was about to cry. Although she was dissatisfied with Dustless on the mouth, her expression was smiling, obviously she did not mean what she said. Xiaoka, crush him for me. Being provoked by an evil person again and again, Seleucid Ubiquitas, who could not bear it, had a face as black as coal, and he could not help but completely explode. Ao 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 ao. The violent dog-type Taigu Xiaoka roared, looking up at Dustless on the head and grabbed him with his big hand. Puchi. The dog-type Taigu Xiaoka once again grabbed the body of Dustless, but before he had time to be happy, he suddenly found that the texture he caught was not right. It was good that he caught Dustless, but it was no different from catching the air, his body was very ethereal and there was no substance. Buzz buzz buzz. A large number of dense flashes were condensed at the foot again. Dustless glanced at the dog-type Taigu Xiaoka coldly, and then the small foot that was raised high did not hesitate to fall. Speed is power. Have you been kicked by the speed of light? Speed of light kick. The shining big foot that was like a layer of gold fell on the head of the dog-type Taigu Xiaoka mercilessly. His head suddenly sunk. Kakaka. Especially the most terrible place of the eyes, it left a burning footprint directly. Boom boom boom. The dog-type creature Taigu Xiaoka was kicked away by Dustless for dozens of meters away in a moment. The body smashed several big trees in succession. Even the ground was pulled out of a long ditch. Every part of his body was badly mutilated. Ao ao ao. Although he was out of breath, the dog-type Taigu Xiaoka still stood up tenaciously. The bloody eyes like a meatball stared at Silver without slowing down. It's useless. Seeing that Coco was still standing up, Selyu Ubiquitas heaved a sigh of relief. The power of that kick just now was really shocking. She even suspected that it could destroy a mountain with one kick. The biological Taigu can be restored by any attack. After being trampled on a few times, Sailor Yubikita's arrogance and confidence returned to normal. Tsk. You can recover from any attack? I advise you to speak less of such arrogant and ignorant words in the future. It will only make you seem more ignorant. Dustless retorted with a sneer. What do you mean? Sailor Yubikita's was stunned. She stared at Dustless unhappily. She understood that there was a hidden meaning in his words. To put it simply, this dog-shaped taigu is still alive. It is completely my kindness. After all, I am also a sensitive person. You have a deep relationship with this dog. It would be too heartless to kill it instantly. You can't talk about the old days. I am not the kind of heartless man. Dustless continued to explain casually, that's why I let the two of you fight for a while longer and communicate with each other before you die. You should thank me for being merciful. Dustless said frankly, not caring about the bulging blue veins on Cyril Ubiquitas's forehead. Poochie. Gil and mine couldn't help but spurt out their saliva. They stared at Dustless gloomily. This guy was too annoying. The meaning of these words was that if you could still breathe, you should thank me for not killing you. Little dog, tear him up for me. Sailor Ubiquitas ordered with a green face. If she listened to Dustless's nonsense, she would be annoyed to death. Ow. The dog-shaped taigu that was accused shook all over. It was like a whistling hurricane. Its speed was so fast that it was difficult to catch it with human eyes. It's so fast. Mine and Gil whispered in shock. Such a huge body, it moved so fast that they could not see it at all. This was also the fundamental reason why they were caught just now. It's so slow. This fleeting speed fell into the eyes of Dustless, but it was as slow as a turtle crawling. There was no highlight. Phew. Suddenly there was a fierce hurricane behind him. Dustless did not even turn his head. He did not need to look to know that it was the dog-shaped taigu. Its movement was too big, it was difficult to not find it. To assassinate a person, first of all, it must be done quietly. Like this, the evil spirit was all over the sky, the movement was too fierce, it could easily locate the position of the enemy. Shinra Tensei. His closed eyes abruptly opened, and an incomparably violent repulsive force erupted out. Kakaka. Because it was too close to Dustless, the dog-shaped taigu was also affected, but its body was not bounced off, but it was directly crushed by the violent repulsion. One of the glass-like spheres was also crushed. Isn't this a thorough death? The core is also destroyed. The dog will definitely die. Taking a glance at Cyril Ubiquitas, Dustless asked indifferently, you should also sleep forever. Sailor Ubiquitas's heart was completely distorted. Her whole body was transformed into a weapon. It was impossible to tame her. In this case he could only destroy her ruthlessly. Tsukuyami. Dustless glanced at Sailor Ubiquitas gently. The majestic spiritual power invaded her mind. He did not torture her, he just destroyed her nervous system and annihilated it instantly. Sailor Ubiquitas's eyes were empty, and she immediately looked at the deep void with infatuation. Then she left the world unwillingly with relief. Chapter 1624. Is that taiga dog finished? What a pity. Mine and Gil sighed. In addition to the necessary task of assassination, the night raid also had the secondary job of collecting taigu. The taigu that killed Zank a while ago was sent to the headquarters of the Revolutionary Army. The taigu of Sailor Ubiquitas did not even leave the body, and there was only a large pool of blood on the ground. It's good that you are fine. Hill revealed a naturally silly smile. His gaze when looking at Dustless had an additional hint of strangeness. The targets that should be eliminated have been eliminated, let's retreat. Stretching out, Dustless yawned and took the lead to disappear into the darkness. You don't have the demeanor of a peerless master at all. Mine shook her head and immediately glanced at Hill. She just caught the obscure expression. Although she didn't know what it meant, Mine didn't know why she felt uncomfortable in her heart. At the moment, in the palace in another place. Three beasts, I have a new task for you. On the ground covered with green grass, Isteth stared at the three people who were half kneeling in front of her and explained, recently many people are rebelling against the minister. You go to pretend to be the night raid and kill all the civil officials who talk nonsense. Understood, Lady Isteth. The three people all answered respectfully. Well, you can go back. Isteth waved her white and tender arms and turned her head with a little tiredness. Recently, she had been crazily training herself, and the time to sleep could be counted with fingers. But, Lady Isteth. At this time Leva, one of the three beasts, suddenly said, Lady Esteth, are you going to deal with Dustless? We can finally get rid of the shame. Not only Leva was very excited, but the rest of Nu and Didos were also very excited. After all, Dustless had seriously destroyed their physical and mental health, and they had not recovered until now. Very good, I can feel your high will. Esteth smiled and nodded, and immediately her eyes dimmed. However, let's forget about Dustless for the time being. If we go to trouble him, the people who will be killed should be us. Esteth remembered the battle with Dustless and whispered, but it is also because of that guy my strength has improved a lot now, and the old stubborn guy also promised to deal with him with me. Old stubborn guy? Leva and the other two were all stunned. Soon after, they said in surprise in unison, could it be the other strongest general of the Empire, General Butte? If he is willing to join forces with Esteth, it will be easy to take down Dustless. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. Those people in the Imperial capital have been very busy recently. At the base of the night raid, the boss Najenda carefully read the information sent, frowning deeply. Her expression was very cautious and serious, and even clearly worried. As for the other members of the night raid, they were eating breakfast. Does Esteth want to force us to come out and kill us all? After a while, Boss Najenda put out the cigarette in her hand, showing a headache. Recently, many civil officials of the Empire have been killed. When they left the night raid leaflets and wanted to pour dirty water on us. Dustless recalled the incident while eating breakfast, and at the same time he did not forget to give a thumbs up to Scarlet Eye. This guy was really good at cooking meat. It must be Esteth's doing. She wants to force us out and kill us in one fell swoop. Leonine nodded in agreement while wolfing down the food. But Dustless stared at Tatsumi and Bullet, who were still training outside the window, with a meaningful smile at the corner of his mouth, and a raging light flashed in the depths of his eyes. I can take this opportunity to kill Bullet, so that this guy won't meddle in other people's business and hinder me every time. When he planned to kill Tatsumi a few times, Bullet, who was in the way, often came out to mess things up. He could use Esteth's hands to kill this stinky bug. We should stop Esteth immediately during the night raid, otherwise more and more civil officials will be killed by her. Those civil officials with conscience are the elites of the country in the future. They must not be lost. Dustless suddenly stood up and said loudly in an impassioned tone. However, when Dustless's words fell, the scene was silent, and they all looked at him. Dustless, are you sick? Scarlet Eye couldn't help but say anxiously, if you are sick, you should give up this mission. Everyone will give you more rewards. You usually don't care about those civil officials. Why are you so concerned about this incident? You must be sick. Blinking her eyes, Scarlet Eye stared at Dustless with concern. At the same time, she put her forehead on Dustless's forehead. After feeling that his body temperature was normal, she strangely said to herself, it seems that you don't have a fever, ahem. It's my responsibility to protect those civil officials. Dustless patted his chest awkwardly. Scarlet Eye probably thought that his brain was damaged. Dustless usually avoided when he heard about protecting those civil officials. He often pretended to be sick or refused for various reasons. This time he took the initiative to attack, which really made the people of the night raid feel puzzled. I can't say that I intend to use this opportunity to kill Bullet. Dustless was secretly depressed by the strange eyes of the crowd. He simply chose to learn from Leonette and eat, ignoring the strange eyes of others. Chapter 1625. For the strange eyes of several people, Dustless simply ignored them, and then began to plan how to kill Tatsumi and Bullet. These two bugs were wandering around all day, which was really disgusting. Don't talk about those boring trifles, there is a big event that needs to be dealt with now. Although the boss Najenda was also quite strange, she did not ask much. Although everyone was a killer and had to obey her orders on the surface, everyone had their own privacy and there was no need to delve into it. According to the latest intelligence, Esteth must have a new plan to attack us at night. Najenda sighed gloomily, knowing that this was Esteth's conspiracy, but she still got involved. This feeling was particularly uncomfortable. Recently, there is a cruise ship with civil servants, which is also the target of Esteth. There are many civil servants with conscience on the cruise ship, and there are also enemies of Minister Ernest. It is estimated that Esteth will not let go of the target easily, so this mission let me, Tatsumi, and Bullet carry it out together. Before the boss Najenda finished speaking, Dustless directly interrupted her speech. 3 people? Najenda frowned slightly with a little hesitation and finally decided, His death is aggressive, and she will not stop until she achieves her goal. Maybe she will send a lot of masters to sneak in. You three are too few, so this mission will be completed by Tatsumi and Bullet, Dustless and Akame. Why does Akame participate in this kind of thing every time? Dustless was secretly depressed. According to the nature of Akame, would she let him kill Bullet? The answer was definitely impossible. Although he had a good relationship with Akame, Akame valued the so-called companions very much, and would never allow Dustless to kill the so-called companions. Let's wait and see. Looking up, he stared at Bullet and Tatsumi who were sweating outside the window. He saw that the two were talking and laughing happily, and the most ridiculous thing was that Bullet showed his love to Tatsumi from time to time. Dustless felt goosebumps all over his body. Originally, this matter has nothing to do with you, but you have to participate in it. You can't blame me for being ruthless, Bulla? Dustless muttered in his heart. He was only targeting Tatsumi, but Bulla and Tatsumi had a good relationship and often hindered Dustless, so he could only kill this eyesore. By the way, when you sneak onto the cruise ship, make sure to dress up a little. The boss Najenda reminded, whether it was Dustless, Akame, Tatsumi or Bullet, the four of them were wanted by the whole city. Dressing up could save unnecessary trouble. On the sparkling surface of the sea, a huge cruise ship was slowly moving forward. Celebrities from all over the world were gathered on the ship. At first glance, there were prominent figures everywhere. This is the first time I've dressed up like this. On the cruise ship where people from all over the world gathered, Dustless and Akame stood together. The two of them were dressed very differently from before. They wore matching couple outfits. Wuxia was wearing a black tuxedo. His slightly messy long hair was specially cut short this time. His deep eyes were as dazzling as the bright moon. They were embedded in his eye sockets and shone brightly. Dustless also respected Najenda's script and tried his best to act as Akame's husband. He had an elegant smile on his face. When he met people who passed by him, he would show a charming smile. Ridiculous, why can Dustless and Akame pretend to be husband and wife and sneak onto the ship, but I have to be responsible for doing odd jobs? Damn, it's really a bad year. Tatsumi, who was wiping the table in the distance, was like a jealous jar that had been knocked over, and he was complaining to himself. Don't be discouraged, Tatsumi. At this time, a stranger patted Tatsumi's shoulder and he was shocked. Tatsumi looked around, but there was no one around. Is it my illusion? After looking around twice, Tatsumi retracted his gaze. Stupid Tatsumi, look clearly, it's me, Bullet. He patted Tatsumi's shoulder again and the mysterious voice sounded again. Brother? Tatsumi was stunned when he heard the words, and he looked around with his eyes wide open. Don't look with your eyes, feel with your heart. This is one of the abilities of my ghost haunting. It can be transparent. Bullet explained in a low voice. Is this the Taigu? It's also powerful. Tatsumi suddenly showed an envious expression when he heard the words. Such a powerful ability was rare in the world. Tatsumi saw it and remembered it in his mind. By the way, when Dustless and Akame sneaked onto the ship, why didn't anyone check them? When I just said that I was a handyman, I went through a lot of interrogation. Tatsumi complained with dissatisfaction, with an unlucky expression, looking at Akame and Dustless who were dancing in the distance. He was envious and jealous. They were all members of the night raid. Why was the gap so big? Dustless and Akame pretended to be husband and wife, while Tatsumi miserably pretended to be a cook and a handyman to sneak in. They look like husband and wife. Leaning against the cabin, he looked straight at Wu Chen and Chi Tong. Wu Chen was elegant and graceful, while Chi Tong had dressed up meticulously. Her appearance was even more soul-stirring. Her skin was fair and beautiful, and her facial features were flawless, like a masterpiece carved by the heavens. The two of them displayed their superb acting skills, and the people around them were less wary of them. Damn it. I'm always the one who gets into trouble. Why do I have to team up with my brother? He's gay. Looking at Bullet who stared at himself affectionately, Tatsumi almost vomited blood. People were really annoying. Chapter 1626. Bullet's eyes were deep and bright, filled with an invisible flame. He stared at the short Tatsumi, and Bullet's eyes were enough to melt him easily. Seeing this, Tatsumi's heart beat faster, and he looked up at Bullet in horror. He used to think that Dustless was dangerous, but compared with Bullet, Dustless was too cute and kind in some aspects. A long and noble tune rang out in the air. Following that, the previously bustling ship instantly became abnormally noisy and filled with terrified voices. Damn, my head hurts, what's going on? My head hurts too. Damn it, could it be Minister Ernest's subordinate? Everyone cover your ears quickly, don't listen to this melody. The tourists on the ship suddenly screamed in horror. The screams were full of endless pain, like headless flies bumping around. Everyone showed a painful expression and was very sad. Plop. Some people couldn't resist the pain, and they directly jumped into the water and chose to kill themselves. At the same time, on the other side, Chi Tong and Dustless also deliberately fainted on the ground. Chi Tong's whole body was tightly pressed on Dustless. Because of the distance, Dustless inevitably touched some places that should not be touched, and so did Chi Tong. It's just acting, you don't have to be so professional. Dustless opened his eyes and half of Chi Tong's beautiful face was directly pressed on Dustless's neck, and he could feel the hot touch. Don't talk, continue to pretend to be unconscious, and when those people come out we will ambush them unexpectedly. Chi Tong opened her eyes and glanced at Dustless, then closed them again, and then pretended to be dead on Dustless's neck, and did not move, which was very professional. It's a waste of a professional like you to not make movies in this world. Dustless stared at Chi Tong dumbfounded. Although this girl said it calmly and simply, her tone seemed that she did not care about being taken advantage of by Dustless at all. However, because Chi Tong's whole body was pressed on him, Dustless could still feel Chi Tong's accelerated heartbeat, and in fact he was also very nervous. What a pity! It was undeniable that Scarlet Eye's plan wasn't perfect, but it wasn't bad. He deliberately pretended to be unconscious and waited for the enemy to relax before dealing a fatal blow. However, in this world, no matter what time it was, there would always be some troublemakers. Damn it, what's going on? Where did this melody come from? It's so powerful that it's swaying when it walks. Tatsumi covered his head. His head was also painful as if it was being torn apart. He was dizzy and walked around like a dizzy duck. He couldn't even distinguish the most basic directions. There's actually someone who can persevere. Not bad. I thought that all the people on this ship would be wiped out. I didn't expect that there would be a fish that escaped the net. Not bad. However, it is also because you are extraordinary that it shows that you are not simple. Kid, you should be the one who attacked at night. The three beastmen walked out of the cabin. The one who spoke was one of the three beastmen, the former General Riva. But now he had become Estetha's lackey. Did the three of you do it? The melody stopped. Tatsumi looked at the three people in front of him with a pale face. His shining eyes were dotted with stars. Or do you still have the strength to talk? It's really extraordinary. One of the three beastmen, the blonde kid, was called Nyo. She looked at the unyielding Tatsumi with surprise and said, "You can still burst out with such a strong will. You are definitely not an ordinary human. There is no doubt that you are a member of the night raid. With the existence of Tatsumi, I know that your plan will fail." Dustless ridiculed Scarlet Eye with a smile. His voice was as soft as a mosquito and only Scarlet Eye could hear it. Is it? Hearing this, Scarlet Eye's performance was mediocre. She looked at Tatsumi, who wanted to fight with the three beastmen, and suddenly showed an expression of appreciation. Tatsumi is not as weak as you think. Then you watch carefully. Dustless also stared at Tatsumi, who was confronting the three beastmen with interest. He really didn't know where this kid got the courage to 1v3. You scum, disappear. Tatsumi held a wide and thick sword in both hands. Immediately he stomped his feet on the ground. His body suddenly jumped up and swept to the sky. Finally, he slashed at the three beastmen, with the force of falling from the sky. Leva snorted when he saw the situation. He immediately rushed out and shouted, "Where did this brat come from? Go home and play house. You are full of flaws." Bang bang bang. As soon as his voice fell, the miserable Tatsumi suddenly flew out. He was kicked more than 10 meters away by Leva. Tatsumi's head was on the ground, and his buttocks were sticking out miserably. He was in an extremely embarrassing situation. Pucci. Dustless, who couldn't help laughing, glanced at Scarlet Eye. This guy was also disappointed. Scarlet Eye originally saw that Tatsumi used to practice so hard. His strength must have improved, but according to the current situation, the essence of Tatsumi's embroidered pillow had not changed. This kid looks frustrated. At first glance, he is the kind of person who will die early. It is useless to catch him. Nyo, quickly send this eyesore clown to heaven. Looking at his face, I know that he is a real waste. Leva ordered with great disdain. Tatsumi was born with the expression of a passerby. Even Leva couldn't extract any information from him. Chapter 1627. You know you are useless just by looking at your face? This sentence was like a nightmare that could not be dismissed, lingering in Tatsumi's mind for a long time. What's the use of looking at my face? What's more, how do you know that I am possessed by the god of misfortune? Tatsumi's self-esteem was challenged by Leva. He quickly stood up and said sarcastically, "With your level, the elder brother can easily solve it." Elder brother? Is it the guy Dustless? A cunning look flashed through his eyes. Leva asked calmly, deliberately stimulating Tatsumi's nerves. You are not even worthy to carry shoes for Dustless. After all we have fought with him, I still feel that it is a dream to be alive. My elder brother is Bullet. Tatsumi retorted with a red face. He and Dustless had deep resentment. How could he recognize such a person as his elder brother? Didos knew. It seems that in addition to this guy there are other people on the ship. You two go to search carefully, they are likely to be disguised. Remember to touch everyone's face. Leva said to the other two beasts. He originally felt strange. Tatsumi was so weak, how could they send such a small person to attack at night? There must be other helpers. Is this Tatsumi's head broken by the door? Dustless, who deliberately pretended to be dead, said speechlessly. He had already seen Nu and Didos coming over. It was only a matter of time to remove his and Akame's disguise. There are indeed some problems. This time Akame also stood on Dustless's side. She did not defend Tatsumi. Tatsumi's behavior was clearly to cheat his teammates. Let's do it, Akame. Glancing at Akame, who was lying on his body, Dustless's eyes flashed a cold light. Do it quickly. Akame nodded. Under Dustless's incredible and surprised gaze, Akame's right arm slowly stretched to her trousers. Then she directly untied it and took out her taigu, Murasame. I had no choice. This banquet doesn't allow anyone to bring weapons. I had no choice but to come up with another plan. Chi Tong looked at Dustless in embarrassment. But there's no need to hide it in your pants, Dustless complained in his heart. He was too lazy to dwell on this issue. Let's do it. They're coming. Looking closely, Didos and Neo were gradually approaching Dustless and Scarlet Eye. Clang 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 clang. Chi Tong suddenly unsheathed his long saber and a cold light shot out. Seeing the right time, Chi Tong turned into an afterimage and shot out, crossing a distance of several meters in an instant. Puchi. Didos, one of the three beastmen, was killed by Scarlet Pupil in an instant. Swish. Swish. Chi Tong did not stop there. Instead he looked at another target, Enai. You want to kill me? No way. The death of his teammate gave Enai a chance to catch his breath. At the same time he caught sight of Chi Tong pouncing on him. He immediately used his special flute to block the incoming attack. Clang 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 clang. Sparks splashed in the void. Chi Tong and Enai were entangled. Although Enai was prepared, he was still sent flying by the brute force of Chi Tong's attack. Bang bang. Crack crack. Enai body slammed heavily on the cabin. He could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. This guy is so strong. Although Chi Tong had injured Enai, he obviously did not have enough strength to kill him. However, this was normal. After all, Chi Tong was not a strength-type player like Bullet. It seems like I don't need to do anything. Seeing this, Dustless decisively chose to continue playing dead. However, at this moment the soldiers hidden in the cabin all rushed out. An extremely unexpected figure suddenly walked out with his head held high. This guy is here too? Seeing the majestic figure with golden hair, Dustless frowned slightly. This person had a majestic appearance. His face was meticulous and his face was full of majesty. He looked very domineering. General Butte. Chi Tong's eyes were full of caution and spoke out the identity of this person. The person in front of him was another great general with the same name as his death, Butte. His strength was beyond doubt. Since he could sit in the position of a great general and have the same name as his death, he must be a strong man with enough strength. However, what Dustless cared about was not this. Blinking his eyes, Dustless's closed eyes opened again, and there was a puzzled expression in his eyes. Why is this old guy here? So after that. Then he thought about it a little and felt relieved. General Butte used his own power to protect a lot of conscientious civil officials. These people are probably his people. It's understandable to protect these civil officials. They are all political enemies of Minister Ernest. Dustless, who understood, was relieved. He stared at General Butte with a slightly playful expression. The current situation seems to be extremely unfavorable for Chi Tong and others. The appearance of General Butte changed the whole situation at once. Where is Bullet? If he doesn't come out, Tatsumi will die. Observation Haki quietly spread out. Dustless tried to find Bullet's breath, and soon this guy floated into his eyes. He was quite surprised to find that this guy was beside him. This old guy isn't trying to assassinate me, is he? Curious, Dustless did not take the initiative to talk to Tatsumi, but continued to play dead as if he saw nothing. However, Bullet did not buy it. Why are you deliberately targeting Tatsumi? We should be companions. The voice full of dissatisfaction rang in Dustless's ears. The voice was so low that only he could barely hear it. Others could not hear Bullet's hoarse voice. Chapter 1628. When Bullet's words fell, Dustless opened his eyes. His eyes were slightly surprised. He sighed at the greatness of gay love. He didn't expect that Bullet would fall out with him for Tatsumi. In fact, there is no reason. I just feel uncomfortable looking at that naive kid all day long. Dustless said an answer that made Bullet angry. This was also a common problem of Dustless. People with protagonist aura were often very annoying. He always sneered at the kind of thinking that his own idea was right and others were wrong. Ha! Bullet, who was stunned by Dustless's nonsensical answer, was furious. Dustless, for such a ridiculous answer you deliberately targeted Tatsumi? You even almost killed him several times. You think it's ridiculous? Wuxia lazily glanced at Bullet and then shook his head gently. Sure enough, we're not on the same path. I have nothing to say to you. Since we're not on the same path, I won't see you off. Same. Glancing coldly at Dustless, Bullet flicked his sleeves and left. It seemed that he was going to find trouble with Leva. At the same time, Bullet's resolute and decisive declaration echoed in Dustless's ears. No matter what, I will protect Tatsumi. Don't ask me why. Just because he called me big brother just now. This guy is looking for death. Is he deliberately making an enemy of me? Staring at Bullet's back if possible, Dustless really didn't want to kill him. Although this guy was gay, he was still a good person. Why did he have to protect Tatsumi the Jinx? It's time for the disguise mission to end. Staring at the robust figure approaching Scarlet Pupil, it was General Bude. His majestic height was several times larger than Scarlet Pupil. It was obvious who was at a disadvantage. It's really sad. Geniuses like you can become the future pillars of the Empire. General Bude walked in front of Scarlet Pupil with great oppression. Seeing Scarlet Pupil's firm eyes, he smacked his lips and sighed very sentimentally, but his eyes were full of killing intent when he looked at Scarlet Pupil. If people like you aren't killed as soon as possible, you'll be a huge problem in the future. Great General Budo restrained his emotions, and they were replaced by endless coldness. Cunning old fox. Scarlet, I snorted warily. Perhaps Grand General Bude already knew that the three beasts had infiltrated the ship. The reason why he didn't rush to stop the three beasts from killing the civil officials was because he had the same plan as the three beasts, to lure the night raid out to court death. It's not that I'm cunning, it's just that you guys are too immature. With a look of devastation in his eyes, Great General Bude crossed several meters in a single step and arrived in front of Chi Tong in the blink of an eye. His mighty fist smashed down. So fast. Akame's pupils constricted. After a moment of shock, she hurriedly took out her katana to block the attack. Bang bang bang. The result was just as Dustless had guessed. Chi Tong was forced to retreat repeatedly. In terms of swordsmanship, Scarlet I might be good, but in terms of strength she was much weaker. She was sent flying by General Bude's punch, her face pale. The old guy's strength is not small. Dustless looked at General Bude in surprise. The taigu of this old guy was also an extremely top existence. It could control the powerful natural forces such as thunder and lightning. Not only was his speed strong, but also his strength. Scarlet I could not occupy any advantage. What a strong power. Feeling the overwhelming power of General Bude, Scarlet I, whose face changed slightly, said to herself cautiously. The eyes that usually looked at her own people as gentle as water were wise and bright at the moment, trying to capture the loopholes of General Bude. Maybe you can completely surpass me in a few years, but as for now... General Bude slowly approached Scarlet I, seeing that she could still stand firm, he gave Scarlet I a look of appreciation. He used all his strength in the blow just now. Now I have the advantage of age after all, go to hell young man. General Bude once again appeared behind Scarlet I in a flash. The exaggerated and abnormal speed of thunder and lightning was revealed. Scarlet I didn't even have time to react. The reaction speed of human beings was always fundamental to lightning. After all, not everyone had observation haki and many dojutsu like Dustless. Oh no! Noticing the sudden appearance of General Bude, Scarlet Eye secretly cursed. She turned her head to look. General Bude's strong and powerful fist had already smashed to her head. She would definitely die if she was hit directly. Wansho Tensei. At the critical moment, Dustless did not hesitate to stand up and disturb the situation. His right hand gently grabbed into the void. Scarlet Eye's body flew into Dustless's arms uncontrollably. Is this gravity? Squinting his eyes and carefully feeling the power that had not dissipated in the void, General Bude was quite surprised. His eyes could not help but follow the source. Among the 48 Taigu, it seemed that there was no weapon that controlled gravity. Little old man, but you're already so old yet you're bullying a teenage girl. The word shameless is tailor-made for you. General Bude heard Dustless's harsh ridicule. He could not help but raise his eyebrows. After staring at Dustless for a while, he said in a very surprised tone, "You are really similar to the dead prince. You can simply pass off as the real one." "It's none of my business." Dustless heard the words and disdained. He was not interested in the so-called prince, but Scarlet Eye's eyes flashed with amazement. She looked at Dustless with her eyes full of brilliance. It seemed that she had thought of a good plan. This kid is the Dustless that his death said? On the surface he is indeed extraordinary and his ability is quite strange. No wonder his death wants to join forces with me to deal with him. General Bude's eyes were fixed on Dustless's head. He could not help but nod with satisfaction. He could feel that Dustless was extraordinary just by looking at his face. Even if he knew his identity as a general, he was very calm. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.